Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the live show. It is currently 11:38 a.m. Good morning. Good morning. Today's date is the 21st of May 2026. How are you doing? We're back for another one. As you know, we have been going back to back with the hearings because there's been a lot of hearings here, especially with everything going on around the world, military wise. And it's been a big topic because it's affecting the entire world, and America is leading the charge, of course, in Iran and the rest of the world. Okay, so in this hearing, top Air Force, Space Force officials testify to House Armed Services Committee. All right, this is a very technical one because, of course, numbers were thrown out. Uh, all of the details of the war happening wasn't specifically mentioned, but there were overview mentioned and in ways that Americans would definitely understand. And I do think if you are interested in what's going on around the world, especially in the United States, you should listen to this. And of course, the budget that every branch of the military is asking for this new year 2027 coming forward, it is astronomical. Well, compared to what it's doing, I wouldn't say it's astronomical because you have to protect the people because you are doing a lot outside of the country. So you don't want any sort of retaliation that you would not be able to control or curb before it even reaches the home soil. So Air Force is asking for a huge amount. The Navy definitely asked for a huge amount. Um, the army definitely huge amount. Every aspect of the military is asking for a huge amount because this time this is the defining moment for every leading country. For example, the United States. I truly believe the United States is the largest whale in the ocean. Of course, we have China, we have Russia. However, the United States has the largest GDP on planet Earth, and it's not coincident. It's not by coincidence. It's majorly by strategic placement, having the largest companies in the world and still growing. People think it's great right now, but I tell you, with SpaceX, with Nvidia, with Amazon, with McDonald's, Walmart, with Palantir, so many great companies in the United States that it's not even, I don't think it started yet. I think it's just growing, and I think it's going to continue growing. And this is going to be what we see for the next 50 to 100 years if, everything is going in the same direction. But here in this hearing, Air Force has a bigger request for a bigger budget. So listen carefully, and I think you're going to learn a lot concerning what's going on in the country. Okay. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you. God bless your family. Stay positive, stay optimistic, and God is the greatest. And God bless this United States. Here we go.
We close out our FY27 budget and posture hearings with the Department of the Air Force. I want to thank the members for their hard work and dedication as we've worked through the dozens of hearings and briefings necessary to inform our approach to this year's National Defense Authorization Act. I also want to thank the Department for their cooperation as we've conducted this critical oversight function. I welcome our witnesses and thank them for their service to our country. For too long, we've underfunded defense. And now we're seeing the consequences. Our munitions are low, and we don't have enough aircraft and autonomous systems to ensure victory over every adversary. There have been unacceptable declines in readiness, and our defense industrial base has shrunk and is no longer capable of rapidly scaling production. That's why I'm so pleased to see the President is requesting a significant increase in the budget for the Air Force and the Space Force. This budget puts an end to the old divest to invest strategy and has done nothing but pit modernization against sustainment. The result of several years of that strategy is an Air Force that suffers today from unacceptably low mission-capable rates while it continues to wait on the delivery of modernized assets that are still years away. This budget includes a 23% increase for operations and maintenance, crucial funding required to better sustain our legacy systems. The budget also invests in modernization with a 54% increase to develop and procure critically needed capabilities. It will enable us to accelerate key deterrent capabilities, including Golden Dome, B-21, and Sentinel. I'm very pleased to see the budget request for Space Force, which recognizes its growing importance as a warfighting domain. It enables the Space Force to increase its support to Joint Force and our combatant commanders. And it funds new mission areas like defending our space assets and breaking red kill chains. We cannot afford to be complacent when it comes to developing our capabilities in space. Our adversaries are well aware of the importance of space-based capabilities and the advantages they provide. I also want to highlight the increase in this request for munitions and industrial base. These funding areas are especially critical to restoring American deterrence. We began some of that work last year with funds in reconciliation and the multi-year authority in the NDAA. I hope to hear about the Air Force's progress in implementing that authority and increasing production. Finally, I want to hear how you plan to use the acquisition authorities given to you by this committee to make sure that that money is in the request will be well spent and accelerate capabilities to the warfighters. As we have seen recently in Operation Epic Fury and Operation Absolute Resolve, our air and space forces are central to the success of the Joint Force and our national security. Their personnel, capabilities, and readiness are crucial to our ability to prevail in conflicts of today and to our adversaries moving forward. I look forward to working with my colleagues to deliver a budget that will enable our airmen and guardians to continue to successfully fulfill their missions. Before I close, I'd like to thank General Saltzman for his many years of dedicated service and congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. With that, I yield to my friend, the ranking member, for any opening statement he may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start where you ended off and thank General Saltzman for his service. He's been our Space Force Chief of Staff at a very crucial time, sort of the growing of the Space Force, and your leadership has been just incredible in fighting through those challenges. Hasn't always been easy, but I think you've put the Space Force on a very good path. And, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Chairman and former Representative Jim Cooper for their leadership in creating the Space Force in the first place. The theme of posture hearings has been really a continuation of the acquisition reform bill that we did last year. What we're really interested in is innovate faster at scale. How do we get there? The Chairman's right. We have critical shortages in munitions and capabilities. So how do we figure out how to innovate faster and get to scale on that? And the Air Force and the Space Force are crucial to that. Obviously, the Space Force is the centerpiece of a lot of that innovation. Secure communications is crucial. Space is going to be a huge part of that. It's also becoming an incredibly important domain in order to project power and be able to defend our space assets, as we know. So we want to learn more about how Space Force is fitting into that. And then on the Air Force side, unmanned aerial vehicles are becoming more and more capable, more and more crucial to what we're doing. How does that mix with our plans for the F-47 and fighter aircraft in general? So I want to know how we're learning from that. On the Golden Dome piece, I think the technology that goes into Golden Dome is, we were doing it already. I mean, basic missile defense is crucial. Space is going to be a key part of missile defense. My concern on Golden Dome is that we envision some perfect system to perfectly protect the entire United States of America, and we wind up spinning ourselves into the ground trying to accomplish something that at the end of the day is unachievable. Even Israel, for all of their capability, protecting a tiny little small space, some missiles get through. So how are we going to build the systems that don't make the perfect the enemy of the good, that enhance our capability in terms of missile defense and protecting areas, but don't imagine something that really isn't achievable? And that sort of comes down to the last point. This is I think probably the only point of disagreement that I have with the chairman, and that's on the budget. Yeah, if we had more money, things would be better. And you could walk through the entire government and make that statement. You know, we have, I don't know how many tens of millions of people without health insurance in this country. We have an education system that isn't where it needs to be. We have a very aging infrastructure, certainly roads and bridges and airports, but water and sewer and all manner of different things. And many of those things are way behind as well. We also have our debt at over 100% of GDP, I think for only the second time since the end of World War II. We do not have an infinite amount of resources. And imagining that we do, I think, gets us into a real problem of trying to do more than we're capable of, just in general, even if we were doing it. But it also, is just unrealistic given where the budget is at. So I'll close, with my second point, which was innovate faster at scale. What I'm interested in, how can that achieve our objectives in a more cost-effective manner? Because as frustrating as it is not to just be able to have as much resources as you want, that's the world we live in. So we have to figure out, how can we build the systems, how can we find systems that give us an advantage? We've seen that in our counter-drone mission. I was reading an article today critical of the Pentagon for, the classic shooting down a $30,000 drone, with a $3 million missile. But now we have a $15,000 system, the MIROP system, that's doing the same thing. We innovated. We got to something that achieved it, and how much money is that saving us? That enables us to do more and meet our national security needs. So I hope we'll hear about that as well. And with that, I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. Now I'll introduce our witnesses. First, we have the Honorable Troy Mink, Secretary of the Air Force. General Kenneth Wilsbach is the Air Force Chief of Staff, and General Chance Saltzman, Chief of Space Operations for the Space Force. Welcome to all of our witnesses. Secretary Mink, we'll start with you. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to come down and walk through the FY27 Department of the Air Force's budget request. I'm proud to represent the 680,000 airmen, guardians, and civilians of the Department of the Air Force, as well as their families and loved ones. After the events of the past year, Operation Midnight Hammer, Absolute Resolve, and now Epic Fury, I don't think there's any doubt that the Air Force and Space Force are the most capable in the world. But today, we are in the middle of a generational shift in how we employ air and space power. Advances in autonomy, adaptive manufacturing, AI, microelectronics, and more give us a unique opportunity to drive down costs and drive up effectiveness across the board. However, our adversaries recognize that opportunity every bit as much as we do. Those adversaries, particularly China, are modernizing at a very rapid pace. To stay ahead, we must innovate faster in everything we do. That means staying ready not just to fight tonight, but next month, next year, and next decade. Unfortunately, over the past 25 years, the DAF's budget has been the smallest relative to GDP in its history. At the same time, the nation has asked more of it. To meet its mission's need, the DAF was forced to shortchange both foundational readiness and much-needed modernization. The fiscal year 2027 President's budget breaks that pattern with a $338.8 billion request for the DAF, a 34% increase from last year. I'll start with our investment to win the fight tonight, foundational readiness. Boosting readiness requires increased and stable funding, particularly given the age of many of our platforms. The FY27 budget increases our foundational readiness investment by 34%. Providing the jump needed to truly recover. We're also looking at ways to operate more efficiently by accelerating decision-making, reducing barriers to entry for industry, and leveraging innovative contract structures. The DAF's lean budget over the years has also resulted in a $50 billion facilities maintenance backlog. This is compounded by the way we have traditionally done MILCON, which results in costs more than double that of the commercial world. To reverse this, the FY27 budget request nearly doubles investments in both MILCON and facilities sustainment, restoration, and modernization. which we will couple with new authorities we've gotten from Congress, thank you, such as progressive design building. Second, production, particularly munitions. While we retain enough munitions worldwide to meet mission needs, we need strong factory lines to sustain and bolster our stockpiles. Therefore, this budget leverages existing commercial production capacity and takes full advantage of multi-year procurement for our most critical munitions, totaling 39,000 weapons of all types by FY33. We are also developing weapons almost as capable as our higher munitions, but at a fraction of the cost with much higher production rates. I'll also note that while money in this request is essential, time is one of our most precious resources, and the Department will focus on companies that can quickly scale production while still broadening the industry base to ensure competition in the future. That leads me to number 3, modernization. The DAF is currently engaged in the broadest program of modernization in its history. While not every program has gone perfect, we have already seen a lot of successes with the new proliferated space architectures, the collaborative combat aircraft, F-47, B-21, and our command and control and battle management systems. The FY27 budget request accelerates those successes and applies lessons learned from across the board. To that end, we are transforming our acquisition system. We are empowering our new portfolio acquisition executives, or PAEs, and their teams with the authorities, resources, and talent they need to accelerate capability delivery. We have delegated nearly every authority we are legally allowed down to the PAEs. We are realigning portfolios to match mission outcomes. Our end state is all DAF acquisitions aligned in the PAE structure to ensure consistent, simplified, and rapid decision-making across the Space Force and Air Force. Finally, our most decisive advantage remains our people, the airmen and guardians who make everything possible. This budget invests in them. That includes a 5 to 7% pay raise for the military, larger bonus pools to incentivize high-performing civilians, increases to military end strength, and a 300% increase in dormitory investments. In conclusion, this budget represents a disciplined strategy to meet our threats. While FY27 does represent a major increase in our budget, we are ready to execute that budget. Much of the new funding will accelerate mature programs with established contracts. Regardless of the final total, we will remain accountable and transparent to Congress and the American taxpayers. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. General Wilsbach, you're recognized.
Good morning, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm proud to represent 665,000 total force airmen serving our nation. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and for your continued support for airmen and their families. The United States Air Force exists to provide the nation with decisive options at both speed and scale. Every day, our airmen deliver that capability by controlling the air, holding targets at risk, moving forces and supplies around the globe, and underpinning the joint force with these combined efforts. As illustrated in recent operations such as Operations Midnight Hammer, Absolute Resolve, and Epic Fury, they do it professionally and without pause. We operate in an environment where distance no longer guarantees sanctuary, networks are contested, and adversaries are fielding capabilities specifically designed to deny us the advantages we have relied upon before. The reality drives us to our focus, and that is readiness, modernization, and taking care of airmen and families. Readiness is the ability to generate combat power quickly, operate in contested environments, and sustain operations over time. Today, our airmen are meeting the mission by doing that while maintaining significant strain. We are flying aircraft that in many cases are older than airmen who maintain them. We are operating at a high ops tempo across multiple theaters and doing so while preparing to be ready for any future conflict. Our fiscal year 2027 budget request prioritizes restoring depth in our force by increasing funding for flying hours, munitions, maintenance, and advanced training that reflects the reality of today and tomorrow's fight. Weapons system sustainment funding increased to over $24 billion, and $12 billion for flying hours. We are focused on readiness that continues to remain credible and can deliver effects. Modernization is not only about replacing old platforms with new ones, but evolving how we fight. Speed, survivability, and decision advantage will define future conflict. It requires a force that is more connected and adaptable. To this end, we are increasing our research and development funding by 27% to over $57 billion. The fiscal year 2027 budget request will accelerate our modernization programs. We are advancing the F-47 and collaborative combat aircraft to increase combat mass and complicate adversary targeting. We are upgrading our current fighter fleet to ensure it remains viable while also investing in long-range strike, advanced munitions, and resilient command and control. Additionally, our nuclear enterprise remains foundational. Investments now will sustain the modernization of the triad through the Sentinel B-21 and upgrades to the B-52 as well as the E-4B. These capabilities ensure our deterrence remains credible and ready. Third is taking care of airmen and families. We ask a lot of our people. Frequent moves and operational stress take a toll. Our Air Force continues to invest in improving options for health care, child care, and spouse employment. Therefore, our budget request strengthens quality of life. We are executing the largest investment in our dormitories in over a decade of $2.7 billion in FSRM and $330 million in MILCON for a total of $3 billion. We are looking for solutions to meet the housing needs of our families with a request of $1.3 billion while funding new construction projects to address child care capacity by adding more than 1,700 child care spaces. The Air Force exists to be the best possible fighting force for our nation. We are building a force that can operate under pressure and deliver effects anywhere in the world. That requires sustained investment, disciplined choices, and an unwavering focus on our people. With your support, we will ensure they have the tools, training, and the backing they need. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. General Saltzman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, distinguished members of the committee. And thank you for your support for the Space Force and our nation's guardians. As the past year has demonstrated, space is more vital than ever to our economic prosperity, our national security, and the effectiveness of the joint force. However, our adversaries are constantly working to take away our military and economic advantages in the space domain. To defend our nation's interests in space, the Space Force must do more than grow. We must evolve to meet the challenges of the new era. To that end, the FY27's budget's landmark investment of $71.1 billion for the Space Force represents a generational opportunity to position the force to meet the rapidly expanding threats and the demands of the nation. I know some of the budget percentage increases being considered sound big, but let me put those numbers in context. There are at least 25 individual military installations inside the United States that each have more personnel than the entire Space Force. And the top 10 of those installations are at least twice the size of our service. The Space Force's budget in comparison to other services will still be less than 5% of our nation's total military spending, an extraordinary value in return on investment for the nation. That investment is a critical down payment to meet the accelerating demands on the service. In 2025, the Space Force saw a drastic increase in mission requirements across space access, global mission operations, and space control, and this trend shows no signs of slowing. To position the service for this mission growth and inform our future needs, the Space Force has been working hard to define what we believe our future operating environment will look like over the next 15 years. And then, based on that, we designed our objective force structure, which will provide a vector for our service's investments to meet the nation's expanding needs and defeat future threats. That analysis makes it clear. The Space Force we have today is not the Space Force we will need for the future. Increases in the service budget and in strength are a national security imperative. That is why the FY27 budget boosts our top line by 130% and strength by 27%. The proposed budget, paired with the increase in strength, will allow the Space Force to recruit and train the guardians we need, build vital space capabilities for the joint force in the nation, and provide the support and infrastructure that the mission growth demands. Today, we are deliberately building a cadre of space-minded warfighters equipped with the skills required in an increasingly contested and evolving domain. We are preparing our Guardian officers to seamlessly integrate with the Joint Force. We are bolstering the development of our enlisted force to ensure they become technical space warfighting experts. And we are developing our civilian Guardians so that they can best provide the unique expertise, ensure continuity of operations, and bring a depth of support across the mission sets. In order to execute all of our expanding missions, it is imperative that we responsibly and effectively convert this increased appropriation into combat capability and warfighting advantage. Unlike other services, the majority of our budget, nearly 2/3, is dedicated to developing and fielding new systems instead of personnel or operations and maintenance. That is why the Space Force is so focused on taking advantage of this once-in-a-generation opportunity to enhance our acquisition processes, all with the goal of accelerating the fielding of vital combat space systems at the speed and scale required for each mission. To that end, newly empowered portfolio acquisition executives are positioned to make better, faster program trades, expediting our ability to deliver combat-credible systems on operationally relevant timelines. We're simplifying our approach to requirements, bolstering our relationship with industry and allies, and ensuring our vital Guardian workforce is expertly trained in the complex task of acquisitions. Unlike other services that are modernizing existing systems, the Space Force cannot modernize what it does not have. We are creating some of these innovative capabilities for new missions from the ground up, particularly in space control, where we are investing in all categories of counterspace systems necessary to deter and defeat aggression in space. Additionally, we are aggressively pursuing more resilient space architectures that can withstand attacks and continue to operate through extended conflict. This includes expanding our Resilient Missile Warning and Tracking Initiative that provides life-saving alert to troops worldwide, and enhancing satellite communications to connect Joint Force units and commanders around the globe during battle. We are growing our space-based sensing and targeting architecture to hold adversary forces at risk through space-based AMTI and GMTI anywhere in the world. But the added manpower and missions and capabilities require commensurate increases to the structures that support them. So the FY27 budget request also includes the required MILCON to ensure our Guardians are fully supported. The Space Force has laid the organizational foundation, defined the compounding threat, and delivered the blueprint required to counter it. Now we must build those structures and systems to ensure domain superiority for years to come. Although our growth request looks large in a vacuum, the request is actually quite small relative to the overall budget, and I think this payoff is significant. With the continued advocacy from Congress, our Guardians stand ready to deter aggression, protect our space-enabled way of life, and if called upon, fight and win. As I conclude my final presentation to this committee as the CSO, let me say thank you for enabling our successes and for the opportunity to highlight the exceptional work that our Guardians are doing every day to secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. I look forward to your questions.
Great. Thank all of you for those opening statements. I'll recognize myself first for questions. Mr. Secretary, I want to start with the area that you touched on and General Saltzman just spent the last 2 minutes of his comments on, and that is acquisition. I was obviously pleased to see the significant increase in the Space Force budget. As this service has matured, it needs those increased resources to operate in space and support the joint force. But to make sure that every dollar is spent effectively, the service must be laser focused on acquisition efficiency. To that end, as you are implementing the reforms passed by this committee and mandated by the department, are there any legislative changes you still need from Congress to further improve acquisition efficiency?
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate the question. Yeah, so as I stated in my opening comments, the end state is we want the PAE structure we have, the portfolio acquisition executive structure we have, to have essentially the same authorities and same responsibilities across the entire Air Force, similar authorities that were given in legislation to SDA and some others. So we would like to actually take all the acquisitions, whether it's SDA or anyplace else, and put them all into a common PAE structure, and we're looking for a little help to be able to do that. Because in the end,
do you have some language in mind that you want to tender to us?
We can provide that.
I would appreciate it.
Provide that. Essentially, what we want to do is give the same level of flexibility to operate at speed and deliver capability rapidly to all the PAEs across both the Air Force and the Space Force. So we're looking to do that. In addition, I think there are some additional authorities relative to multi-year procurement and those sorts of things that will make it easier for us to execute those types of authorities. And I think we're looking at potential language to suggest on that too. But those are probably the two big things.
Great. Well, I would offer to you that one of the things that I've heard from the private sector is they like the new PAE system, but they are encountering, while there's good support at the top where the PAE is, in the bowels of the worker bees, there's still a culture that's requirements focused and hasn't broken away from that. So I would ask you to be mindful of that as we mature that new structure.
If I could, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman,
please.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, on that, yeah, I was out at out talking to, I think, probably about 2/3 of the Space Force's PAEs last week, and that was a concern of those two, is how we manage that requirements process. So we're doing a lot to structure the PAEs and give them the authorities, but in line with that, we're also looking at how we do budgeting and requirements, the budgeting and requirements process within the department, to streamline that as well to get at that point.
Yeah, fewer requirements, the better. Next, I want to ask you about how the Air Force has implemented DERPM structure and is ensuring that General White is able to execute on his direction to deliver critical capabilities such as Sentinel with urgency.
Yeah,
with urgency.
I feel a bit fortunate in that both the DERPMs we work closely with, General White and General Gutlein, two of the DERPMs are two of the best acquisition officers we have in both the Air Force and the Space Force. So I'm pretty happy about that, because they are, in both cases, responsible for some of the most important programs that the Department of the Air Force has, not just Sentinel, but F-47, 21, B-21. So it's critically important that we have a tight relationship with them, and we do. I made sure that Dale sits like 100 paces from my office. I meet with him regularly to make sure that we are tightly coupled. He's getting everything he needs, and that he's delivering what the department needs to execute mission in the future. So I think it's working well.
Great. General Wilsback, I'm a big proponent of unmanned platforms, and I'm interested, speaking of the F-47, I like that we're moving to the 6th generation fighter. When are we going to make the next leap to optionally manned or remotely manned tactical fighters?
Thanks, Chairman. I'm a fan of unmanned as well. In fact, for Epic Fury, perhaps maybe the most valuable player was unmanned, and this the MQ-9, and so we've made many strikes. I don't want to say how many because the number's classified, but no other platform is even close to the MQ-9, which is an unmanned platform. So we get a lot of utility out of them, and don't put our folks at risk. We're probably not quite at the state of autonomy where we can completely replace the entire force or even the fighter force with unmanned. And as we bring on collaborative combat aircraft and we integrate it with the F-47 and F-22 and F-35 to begin with, there's still some level of human interaction to task that automated platform. There's enough artificial intelligence and machine learning inside of the collaborative combat aircraft to, once you give it a tasking, for example, go attack this series of targets, it can go do that with the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are inserted in the software. But you still need a human to make those sorts of decisions.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet.
Well, and that's why I said remotely operated. It keeps the human in the loop, but we don't have to have a person in the fighter.
Sure. And so we're realizing that already with our already unmanned platforms. CCA will expand that to a degree because, for example, the MQ-9 doesn't really have autonomy. It's remote.
Exactly right.
CCA will have autonomy, and I've actually had a chance to operate the software in the simulator. It's very intuitive. It's highly capable, and we are going to be able to put extreme pressure on any adversary that would go up against us with F-47, F-22, or F-35 and in combination with the CCA, because not only will we have that automation and not put our folks at risk, it also increases the mass that the adversary has to deal with.
Right. Well, I'll leave it at this. We have to start thinking about that remotely operated fighter jet in part because we want to not have to put a fighter pilot at risk. But the technology already exists. We're demonstrating it at present. But the cost of these platforms is reduced dramatically if you don't have to accommodate a human being. And I just want, getting to the ranking member's point about we got to start thinking smart about spending money, I just want us to start thinking about it. And with that, I will yield to Mr. Carvajal for any questions he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. General Saltzman, I understand you're retiring after 34 years of service in the military. I want to thank you for your service, for your distinguished service, and for your leadership in strengthening our nation's Space Force. You have served admirably, and I've really enjoyed working with you. Best wishes. Maybe now you could go back to my district and enjoy some of those good libations that we have, also known as Central Coast wine. So hope you can visit. Vandenberg Space Force Base is the second busiest spaceport in the world. SpaceX and Firefly already have active pads. ULA will soon launch from there again, and Blue Origin is in the early stages of building a slick. The boat dock on the South Base is a critical piece to the launch infrastructure at Vandenberg, but it is too small to accommodate the larger launch vehicles that will soon be launching from the base. I know this will be an expensive and complex project. My understanding is that this is scheduled to be in fiscal year 2032, but I think that is too far away and will stagnate launch growth out of the Western Range. General Saltzman, can you explain this project, the projected timeline, and what we can do to move up that timeline?
Thank you, Congressman, and I do look forward to maybe getting back out to the Central Coast for the libations. When I was stationed out there just about 12 years ago, we did 7 launches. Last year we did 71 launches. We're projecting 175 launches is what our goal is ultimately for the capacity we have at Vandenberg. We can't do that without enhancements to that port facility. So it's high on our priority list to make sure that we can meet the launch tempo that's required out there. FY32 is where it's programmed in just because we think that may be what it takes to go through all the process, and all those processes that have to be put in place to do the kind of work that's necessary out there. But it is a $650 million project. So this is not an inconsequential adjustment out there. Look forward to working with the entire Central Coast Commission out there, as well as you and others. We would love to accelerate that, but it's not an uncomplicated process and an important one.
Thank you. The most recent NDAA included Section 1607, which requires a study on the feasibility and advisability of establishing TAC SRT as a program of record. Secretary Mink and General Saltzman, can you give me an update on where that study is or any preliminary findings?
Thank you, Congressman. So TAC SRT is I think, one of the success stories of the last 3 years. We basically are leveraging commercial capabilities on orbit to augment and complement the tremendous ISR capabilities that come from the country. We've increased funding over time as the demand has grown. Last year alone, there were 445 requests. We provided over 500 products, some of those at unclassified levels, most of those at the unclassified levels to support operations. We've merged the marketplace that delivers those capabilities into our commercial space office, where they have access to about $168 million in order to adjust and increase the commercial marketplace for the combatant command demand signal. So I'm very comfortable that we're providing the services that the combatant commands need. If there was any period where this was demonstrating success, we have demonstrated that success, and now it's probably time to figure out how we formalize TAC SRT as a mission area.
Thank you. The requirements for launch to high energy orbits like MEO and GEO will likely increase over the coming years. Historically, all launches to GEO have been on heavy launch vehicles, and since National Security Space Launch Phase 3 began, all have been in Lane 2 with the highest levels of mission assurance. There are some new capabilities coming online that will offer creative approaches to reach GEO. General Saltzman, do all satellites going to GEO need that highest level of mission assurance that Lane 2 launches require? And could some direct to GEO launches come through NSSL Lane 1 once there are providers onboarded that can reach that orbit, especially if they could offer lower cost per launch.
Well, some of the most critical satellites that we put on orbit go to geosynchronous orbit. They have to last for a long time. We over-engineer them. So mission assurance in the launch process is vital to making sure that we get the most out of those satellites we put into geosynchronous orbit. We are always open to improving the efficiency of putting capability on orbit. But we don't want to jeopardize mission assurance. That's going to be first and foremost to maintain our effectiveness on orbit. But it is worth looking at what are the options to make sure that we can balance those competing requirements.
If I could just add, I know we're out of time, but I just add quickly, there are a number of companies, some of these smaller commercial companies, developing what we'd refer to as a third stage or an upper stage that actually allows the traditional LEO or medium class launch vehicles to put much larger payloads in the higher energy orbits, GEO or MEO. Impulse is one of them. There's another number of companies that are looking at doing that, which could really give a lot of flexibility to our launch infrastructure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Out of time, I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson's recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mike Rogers, and I want to congratulate the chairman for his vision for Space Force. And now, he's ahead of the curve. Now, autonomous air vehicles. He just won't stop, and this is good. With that in mind, as the son of a flying tiger of World War II, who served in India and China, I especially appreciate your professionalism. In 2003, I was on a delegation led by Chairman Kurt Weldon to Beijing, where we met President Jiang Zemin in the presidential compound. When I was introduced as a member of Congress, he yawned, but when it was added that I was the son of a flying tiger, he correctly threw his arms up in the air and announced that the American military is revered in China at that time, and I'm sure ultimately again. With the successful operations that have helped bring down the brutal dictatorships of dictator Assad in Syria and dictator Maduro in Venezuela, the extraordinary performance against the dictatorship in Tehran through Operation Epic Fury, eliminating dictator Khomeini as in the first minute of a conflict to join the 40,000 people, Iranians, that he had murdered this year alone. As we face the growing situation of threats from the Chinese Communist Party, War criminal Putin, Iran, North Korea, and other adversaries, we must ensure that the American military remains dominant to maintain peace through strength and to deter, in particular, war criminal Putin, who wants to resurrect the failed Soviet Union. As he has annexed Belarus, he has invaded Ukraine, of course, he maintains troops in Moldova, and he's invaded Georgia and rigged the elections in Georgia, and so sadly that the correct president is Salome Zoris-Favili. But over and over again, we can provide, with your efforts, peace through strength. With that in mind, General Wilsback, as the Air Force recapitalizes its air fleet, I support the Air National Guard. The South Carolina Air National Guard was at the tip of the spear as part of the first military aircraft operating over Iran during Operation Epic Fury, demonstrating exceptional skill and professionalism while flying legacy F-16s. It's reminded that the Guard is not just homeland defense, but can achieve around the world. I am particularly appreciative that McIntyre Joint Air Base of Eastover has this morning at 12:23 been added by redistricting in South Carolina to the district that I will be fortunate to run in. With that in mind, the Air Force modernizes its fleet. What is the plan to recapitalize Air National Guard units like the South Carolina Air National Guard so they're not left flying aging air platforms while providing active duty units newer capabilities?
Yeah, thanks, Congressman. I'm also a fan of the McIntyre unit. I've flown with them a number of times over the years. It's always been, I mean, I've been in the Air Force 40 years, and it's always been a really top-notch unit. So thank you for your support.
Hey, I forgot to say, I also pick up Shaw Air Force Base. The map is just 12 hours old, so this is good. Thank you to me.
You bet.
So I've got to be nice to y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No, we do wish to recapitalize, all of the aging infrastructure, not just in the Air National Guard, but it's true of the active duty as well as the Air Force Reserve. And our modernization plan for 27 incorporates the Air National Guard, and as a matter of fact, even McIntyre is a candidate for a future F-35 base. We haven't, the Secretary hasn't decided yet on that, but they're certainly a candidate, and we look forward to that competition.
And thank you very much. And indeed, General Saltzman, best wishes on your retirement. I'm grateful that my nephew, Alan Heritage, has the privilege to work with all of you. With that in mind, it's encouraging, too, to see that there's an effort to procure commercial imagery. What's the status of doing that to promote your efforts?
Yes, sir. We're investing in, as I mentioned, the Commercial Space Office has a portfolio to build a marketplace for all the commercial imagery providers, and we do that under our TAC SRT programs, surveillance, reconnaissance, and tracking. And we've seen over 500 products produced just over the last year for combatant
and indeed, I don't have more time, but I want to point out we can learn real-world conflict from our Israeli friends and the success of victory for people in Ukraine. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary and General Wilsbeck and General Saltzman, thank you for being here. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the 6 airmen that we lost in the KC-135 crash over Iraq on March the 12th. I also want to thank the airmen at Travis and across the Air Mobility Command and throughout the Air Force who have carried out extraordinary share of the fight in Iran. Well done. For years, we've heard about the Air Force programs, exquisite systems that bring us into the modern era. But from Europe to the Middle East, we see time and again small distributive systems and reliable platforms have outsized impact, while exquisite systems make exquisite targets for our adversaries. General Wilsbeck, you spoke very passionately when you answered the chairman's question about UASs and their future. However, your budget doesn't follow that passion. Looks like you have $1.4 billion for CCAs. You have $7.4 billion for the F-35s, most of whom will be delivered unable to have necessary equipment like radars. And you have $5 billion for the new F-47. I grew up on a ranch, and I remember at the cattle sales, all talk, no cattle, put your money where your mouth is. Apparently, your passion for new platforms doesn't quite match. So let's get some detail here. What exactly, not now, but in writing, please deliver to us exactly how you're going to spend the $1.4 billion for CCAs. Is it only CCAs or is it other kinds of UASs? Please deliver that, and let's get down to the detail here. With regard to the F-35s, yeah, you're going to have 39 new ones. Many of your old ones, in fact, all of your old ones, do not meet the requirements for readiness. What are you doing about that? Some of that has to do with the right to repair. Some of it has to do with necessary equipment standing by, all of which is deficient. So how are you going to deal with that? Please, in writing to the committee, get down to the details. Nice oversight, overview, it's interesting, but you operate in details, as do your men and their equipment. We need the details, okay, particularly on the readiness side of it. My colleague, who is now left for a few moments, said, you're going to talk about the Sentinel, aren't you? Mr. Saltzman, I know you're going to retire. We wish you the best, but are going away. Why the Sentinel? We are now developing and actually following Russia in the development of hypersonic cruise missiles that are maneuverable, for which, at the moment, there's no defense. That platform is being developed and provides yet another alternative to the sitting duck, Minuteman III and its follow-up Sentinel. Why? Deterrence? Please, let's get real here. The Minuteman III will be able to be reconditioned and available for the next 20 years. Why are we spending in this budget money, $5 billion, for the Sentinel? So questions, please deliver in writing the answer to that question. The deterrence, the new platforms, the maneuverable hypersonic cruise missile, a new platform that can and probably will be nuclear. So why? I want to have the detail here. I don't have time in this committee hearing to get into the detail, but I want you to deliver to this committee and specifically to the Readiness Committee the detail on why we're doing this and the amount of money that you're spending on the upgrade and the maintenance of the Minuteman III, and specifically how long you intend to do it. Okay? So these are the details about which we have to go. Finally, in 19 seconds, Travis Air Force Base is limited 50% for the lack of a taxiway. Why not, across this thing, put in place a taxi runway that would increase the throughput at Travis Air Force Base by 50%?
Gentleman's time's expired.
Thank you,
Excellent
Mr. Chair.
point, though. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized. Mr. Turner.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Mr. Secretary, the operations of Epic Fury, Midnight Hammer, Southern Spear continue to demonstrate the importance of the work that you do. Mr. Secretary, everybody would be disappointed if I didn't highlight that your career includes experience at NASIC and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but even more than your experience, we are all very thankful for your leadership. General Saltzman, I want to also join everyone in thanking you for your leadership and your almost 4 years of service to Space Force, and congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. I think this is an excellent time for us to get your wisdom. The chairman is very proud of the performance of Space Force, and the data shows that Space Force has performed incredibly. Space Force has increased launches from an average of about 24 per year prior to 2018 to almost 200 by the end of the year. Demonstrated tactical responsiveness, successfully getting satellites from warehouses into orbit within 96 hours of demonstrating that. Shown its rapidly acquired new technology, demonstrated by its successful fielding of counter-SATCOM capabilities within 48 hours of identifying the requirements. Space Force has successfully integrated into the Joint Force globally, standing up service components at all geographic combat commands. Continues to surpass recruiting and retention goals. Space Force, by your own accounting, has created nearly $2 billion in private funding over 5 years in direct support for military requirements. Looking back and now looking forward, with your wisdom, where is Space Force on the right track? Where do we have some work to do? And what should Congress do?
In 3 minutes. Thank you, sir. No, I very much appreciate that, and the work of the chairman and the ranking and the entire committee. I think the Space Force is on a good path. I really do. One of the success stories that I point to routinely is I believe we've, and I've gotten feedback from industry on this, that we have shifted the nature of the relationships we have with industry. It was very transactional. We would throw requirements kind of over the transom and hope that they would deliver something back, and we would go through testing and generally be happy with some of it and not happy with other parts of it. That's just not going to work going in the future. It's certainly not going to work at the speed and the scale that we need these capabilities delivered. So we're investing heavily with industry to collaborate, to get minimum viable products in the hands of our operators as quickly as possible. A small number of requirements necessary just to advance the programs, get them in the hands of the operators, and then get their real-world practical feedback and continually upgrade. That's a different model. We have to work closely with Congress in order to make sure that we understand what the requirements are, we get the right funding, we have stable funding over a number of years so we can continue to get that rapid enhancement. But that's going to be a lot more work because it's not the traditional mindset that we have for our procurement and acquisition. We've really doubled down on the training and education of our forces. So many new authorities that we've gotten. We have to train our contracting officers. We have to train our acquirers. We have to train the engineers so that they understand all the things that can be put in place. So we really doubled down on putting the kinds of courses and education in place so that they can execute the authorities that we've given them. But I'm most proud of converting what was basically a merchant marine into a Navy, if you'll let me use that analogy. I've used it before. We delivered services as a military space organization before the Space Force. Now we have to control the domain. And I think we've done a nice job of transitioning to a combat credible force. We're providing resilient architectures. Our forces are trained in operations of their tactics against thinking adversaries. We've proven that most recently in Epic Fury. 5 times as many deployments as we would normally see, we supported Epic Fury. And all of the forces have been fully integrated. I hear from Brad Cooper and the Southcom team how well the space capabilities are integrated and how dependent they are on their success. So I think we're on the right track in terms of training, educating, and building the kinds of combat-ready forces on an operationally relevant timeline. And with continued support of this committee, I think we'll be in good shape for the years to come.
Mr. Secretary, you reached for the mic on the unmanned question from the chairman. Perhaps you wanted to advocate for the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program funding that's in fiscal year 27 budget.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we talk about an unmanned fighter aircraft, for all practical purposes, that's what a CCA is. The combat capability it will have. It is really a way to build a large number of lower cost, essentially fighter aircraft that will support and operate in collaboration with the manned fleet. And we see that model going forward for quite some time.
We certainly see that in the Anduril program in Ohio that you've been working very closely with that have proven results.
And it's been a very successful acquisition so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and congratulations on your retirement, General. It's nice to see you, Mr. Secretary, again as well. My questions start with you, sir. A key element of the Air Force's future is, as we've been talking about today, the manned and unmanned systems that are working in concert with one another, and that there is an obvious lean towards autonomous weapon systems as well. Manned and unmanned systems will even help alleviate some of the persistent pilot shortages that we've been experiencing that face the Air Force. For Mr. Secretary, as a preliminary question, would you agree that manned and unmanned systems are the future of the Air Force and air power?
Before I answer that, every time somebody congratulates General Saltzman on his retirement, it hurts just a little bit.
It makes me jealous too. Trust me.
Yeah,
it hurts me
to
too.
get him to stay, and I am not as persuasive as I thought. He's leaving. Absolutely, Congresswoman. Unmanned aircraft. Again, I think they will play an increasingly important role as we build out into the future across the board.
I agree, and I think one of the things that I'm sort of stymied by is that in the Air Force proposed budget that basic research is being cut by 5%, applied research is being cut by 21%, and advanced technology development is being cut by 14%. In an environment, frankly, where I feel like money seems to be no object, what was the calculus behind those decisions to cut the budget in those areas?
So that's a good question, Congresswoman. I think if you look at the totality of what we're spending on unmanned platforms, the dollar investment's obviously gone way up. But I take your point is some of the specific basic research. I'm gonna go back and take a look at that. We are spending more money on the autonomy part, but some of the platform R&D stuff. I'm going to go back and take a look at that, Congresswoman.
I really appreciate that, because I think that's sort of a leading indicator of where our values are, where your money, where your mouth is, and I think it's important that we do that. I think it also has real implications to personnel. As you know, we've talked about this, was an acquisitions officer and didn't see a leadership opportunity in my future. I couldn't look up and see that. And it definitely would seem that way. The signal would be to people like me now that because of reduction in budgets in those kinds of areas, that maybe they're not valued as STEM professionals, as people with those backgrounds. So I really appreciate you looking into that. My second question is for General Saltzman. You represent the very smallest and newest branch of the military. Your service was spun out of the Air Force because the space domain was growing in importance and will continue to grow. First of all, I would assume the answer to this is yes, General, but do you agree that establishing the Space Force was a good idea in retrospect?
A wildly successful idea.
I concur. General Saltzman, has the Space Force taken advantage of being a new service in that you have the opportunity to develop a new culture in and separate from the Air Force and approaching space operations, as you've mentioned during this hearing, in a very different set of ways?
Yes, ma'am. I think we've been successful not only in pushing the envelope into what we can do, but growing to take on those new missions.
And so I guess where I'm heading with this question, General Wilsbach, is in the Air Force, when you would have to rank order kind of where your priorities are in terms of what you're putting your efforts to, where would cyber fall in that 1 through 5 or below 5?
I don't know if I could rank it 1 through 5 because it's integral to everything that we
Agree.
do. It's integral to everything that we do.
I agree. I think one of the things is that our services, cyber is in and of itself a domain too.
Correct.
And I think that we need to be thinking about it in the same way that we thought about the Space Force as potentially its own force, so that we might be able to recognize its incredible importance. With what's left of my time, my last question is also for General Saltzman. We've been talking a lot about acquisitions and your relationship with industry. Space is a lot more congested and contested than ever before. I'm worried that the department might be underutilizing commercial space domain awareness tools that are available in the commercial sector, despite growing sophistication from industry in that area. What steps are you making sure and taking to make sure that we evaluate and integrate what is available on the open economy in your needs requirements?
We have what we call the JCO, the Joint Commercial Office, that pulls in that commercial data. We've established the Universal Data Library as a parking spot for all of that data. We continually evaluate it. We've got 22 different nations that contribute to that as well. So we have the marketplaces to evaluate that data from all the commercial providers, and then we rapidly pull it in and use it for operational purposes.
Thank you. I look forward to continued investigation into the power of industry. I yield and appreciate the indulgence.
Yes, and I do want to, on the point that you make, you made reference earlier to Epic Fury. What happened with Absolute Resolve, the Operation Absolute Resolve, goes to your point. Space and cyber capabilities were demonstrated as part of the joint force as never before in an eye-wateringly effective manner. So these are very important additions to our joint effort. With that, I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mink, General Wilsbach, General Saltzman, thanks so much for joining. General Saltzman, thanks so much for your incredible service to our nation for 35 years, and thank you to you and your family for your service and sacrifice. The nation will be forever grateful for that. General Saltzman, I want to start with you. Thank you for coming out to the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in March with Representative Kiggins and myself. And I hope it was helpful for you to see that vertical lift to space capability that's there at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport. And this delivers on a number of very key missions and make sure we have that additional access to space, which is now more important than ever. Historically, Congress has played a very pivotal role in putting resources towards these FAA-approved facilities in these states to make sure we have that vertical launch state-based spaceport capability. And we know that's even more important as space traffic or launch traffic gets bigger and more congested at Canaveral and at Vandenberg. These new capabilities, I think, are going to be key. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article from Politico dated May 19, 2026, and this article details a report from the Commercial Space Foundation that says U.S. launch infrastructure won't be able to support growing launch demand without considerable investment.
Without objection, so ordered.
Also appreciate your response. I know Representative Kiggins and I wrote you a letter about the importance of this capability in these particular areas, and in your response where you said a critical component of our national launch capability and a key contributor to meeting these growing security demands are places like the spaceport in Virginia and Alaska. Now that you've seen these launch capabilities firsthand and knowing, as I spoke about, the congestion at the Cape and at Vandenberg, and knowing more and more heavy launches are going to take place there, which even creates a bigger impact on medium and small launch capabilities. Can you share your thinking about these state spaceport capabilities in vertical launch to orbit capabilities and how they are going to be necessary in the future, and what would be the plan for us to make sure we have that capability expanding in those two spaceports?
Well, thank you, sir, and I appreciate the opportunity to come out and visit the site with you. And I agree. It's a gem out there, and there's some real capability. I think it's a two-phased approach in my mind, and I'll defer to Secretary Mink too. I know he's got some ideas on the launch infrastructure, but first step is make sure that we're efficiently using those spaceports that we do have. I think there is some reorganization, some redesign of small and medium lift capabilities in our larger spaceports that might be able to be offset and gain the efficiencies you get from places like Wallops Island. So that's step one, is make sure we're using as efficiently as possible the resources we have. And then second is growing the infrastructure to support the demand signal that we are seeing from industry and our national security launches. We're going to have to increase the capacity. And then maybe connected to that is the geographic resiliency that you might need to have separate launch locations and not be so tied to just the two specific launch ports that we have. So we're looking heavily and we're analyzing alternatives to support other options.
Sure. General Saltzman and Secretary Minky, I'd like to get your specific ideas about what would these investments look like? What should we focus on in how we are directing money to these state spaceports in order to augment what's going on at the Cape and at Vandenberg?
One will be, as we redesign and we say we're going to move capability from one spaceport to another, that's not inexpensive. And then to make sure that it has things like the port facilities, it has the consumable infrastructure that's required, storage facilities, payload integration facilities. So there are MILCON efforts, there's upgrades, and then we're going to have to think about the regulatory, how fast can we launch? What are the launch licensing procedures, environmental impact studies that we have to do? All of those are going to require oversight to make sure we get it right and do it as efficiently as possible.
Very good. Secretary Mink?
Yeah, second everything General Saltzman said. I guess what I'd add is, as well as, we've just finished up a study, and that's working its way through the process to come down to the Hill. At a high level, what it says is we probably need another site that's capable of heavy and super heavy launch capability, both from a resiliency perspective and just even at the Cape limitations and how much space we got. It still shocks me a little bit that just launch bases, launch infrastructure seems to be the limitation right now on the nation's ability to grow our commercial, or grow at least for the next foreseeable future, grow our commercial launch infrastructure, which supports, again, both commercial and national. So it looks like we need to take full advantage of the efficiencies at the current spaceports, but we probably need another location that's capable of a heavy and super heavy launch kit.
Gentleman's time's expired. The chair and I recognize the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith, and thank you to all of our witnesses. I'm over here today. I want to focus my questions on strategic mobility, airborne battle management, and Space Force structure. So I have a question for each of you. General Wilsbach, the Air Force now expects portions of the strategic airlift fleet to remain operational for decades longer than originally planned, while the next generation airlift remains years away. The Air Force also waited decades to recapitalize KC-135 fleet before beginning the KC-46 program. What exactly is the department doing now to ensure the next generation airlift does not face similar recapitalization or schedule pressures as the strategic airlift continues to age?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yes, we have in the budget this year is a study that's designed to look exactly at what you're talking about, the next generation airlift. And the idea behind this study is to determine what the next aircraft will look like, what it will be, and the requirements thereof. And it's to replace the C-5 and the C-17. We have a lot of life left on both those platforms. And so we're not in a big crisis right now. We don't think we need to replace the C-5 until about 2040, and the 17 is even beyond that. So I think we're in okay shape, and that the budget is designed to look at this for the next year.
Thank you. And staying on operational capability, Secretary Mink, the department previously sought to terminate the E-7, but recently announced plans to move forward with 5 additional aircraft. We did not see funding for those aircraft in the fiscal year 27 budget request, though we understand the department plans to submit a budget amendment to fully fund the program in 27 and beyond. What operational realities actually cause the department to reverse course, and what's the status of that funding request?
Maybe answer the second part. First, the status of the request is we're putting through a budget amendment, and I think it's in the ballpark of around $1.5 billion. It's working its way through the system right now to come to the Hill. That'll fund 27, and then when we build the 28 budget, we will work it into the long-term plan. With respect to what's changed, what's changed is when the decision was made to cancel the E7. We were working at a top line of the department of about 890. We have, we hope, much more budget flexibility now, and that was one of the things that we put back on the priority list to put into the budget. It was really just simply at the 890 mark, we were cutting things that we didn't want to cut. Now we have enough flexibility to put some of that back in, and that was one of the airplanes that went on it. Just at a very high level, we believe the space-based and the air-based AMTI mission working together is where we need to be, and we're looking for support from the Hill, so appreciate that.
Do you feel confident that the department can now execute airborne battle management without the E7?
I think we had a plan to do that without the E7 using space-based, because again, if you look at the larger air battle management, it is a fusion of sensors that are really across airspace and the ground domains. The E7 helps make that problem easier. With that, I'll maybe turn it over to General Wilsbach for a couple comments.
I agree with the Secretary. We can do air battle management from a number of different platforms, but the E7 allows us what we believe is the highest capability to be flexible and get the air battle manager in the right space at the right time to manage that battle.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to go to General Saltzman and turning to Space Force, which, by the way, has the best logo of all the services. I got to point that out. Very modern. General Saltzman, the Space Force is receiving major budget and manpower growth while also stating the force remains too small for expanding mission set. Given recent information provided to Congress showing shortfalls in both military and civilian acquisition personnel, what's the service doing to address those gaps, particularly as it prepares to manage a roughly 300% increase in funding?
Well, we are planning to grow as quickly as possible. Something like 2,000 new civilian hires over the next year, for example. We're doing about 300, I'm looking at my notes here, 300 personnel actions per month to bring on that civilian workforce, which is a big part of our acquisition cadre. 2,800 new active duty guardians is a part of the request. The missions that are coming on are going to require us to put together 10 new program offices to make sure we can do the kinds of acquisition that's necessary on an operationally relevant timeline. It'll probably result in about 40 new squadrons, just with the new missions we have coming down the pipe. So this is about understanding what the mission requirements are, doing all the manpower.
Gentlelady's time's expired.
And then bringing in the acquisition to do
Chair
it.
now recognizes a gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Mr. Secretary, I represent Robbins Air Force Base, one of the 3 depots that are gems to our country. Just, is the Air Force still committed to the 3-depot strategy?
Absolutely, Congressman.
I'm going to get a little further into this, but one of my concerns is as we divest older equipment, that we make sure that we're not creating a capability gap when we get rid of those older systems, making sure that the new systems are developed and in production before we get rid of them. So as we talk about the E-11s, I know there's been some postponement of the A-10s. Interested in any comments on there on the divestment of the A-10s and the MQ-9s. What is the plan to replace the assets with equal or greater capability without generating a gap?
Every one of those platforms are the strategy is a little bit different, but we do have strategies for all of them. On the MQ-9 side of the house, we are not divesting the MQ-9. We have had some losses in that aircraft, and we're working to fill those losses. But in parallel, we are looking at what is the follow-on to the MQ-9 aircraft, and it's probably going to be not one platform. It'll probably be multiple platforms. And we've actually been doing a lot of the R&D work to be positioned to do that, and we're now in the process of doing that. On the A-10 side of the house, we've essentially slowed down and delayed the retirement of that platform, and in many cases, What's that allowed us to do is backfill those units with more capable, survivable combat aircraft, which is part of the budget submission, allowed us to deliver those platforms earlier and replace the A-10s. On the 11 side of the house, again, the current challenge with that aircraft is survivability where we need it. We are pushing hard across the fleet to go to more secure and survivable beyond line of sight SATCOM in all of our platforms, and we are rapidly fielding that capability across the entire force, wide body and fighter aircraft.
They are more survivable than new platforms are, but when it comes to combat search and rescue, the A-10s have done an extremely good job. I'm concerned that as we move to faster systems, loiter time and other things that we need for combat search and rescue will be sacrificed for that. General Wilsbach, and let me say this with regard to the A-10s and a lot of our weapon systems. When we're not going to use them anymore, I do not understand why we don't sell them to our allies. And could you speak to that, Secretary? Like, why, if we're going to divest ourselves of a system like the A-10, why do we put it in the boneyard? Why don't we sell it to a NATO partner who could use the system, and then it would be there when we needed it?
If I could, maybe I'll touch on that, and then I'll turn it over to General Wilsbach to answer how we're going to conduct the rescue support mission sets. Yeah, so we do sell a lot of platforms to our international partners, a very large number of platforms to international partners. And when they look at what they want to buy from a cost-effective, survivable combat effectiveness perspective, they are focused on, either the F-35s or MQ-9 type aircraft. Just due to the cost and the age, and the A-10s are quite old aircraft and becoming more and more challenging to maintain. It just doesn't look cost effective from that perspective. But
I'd rather give them to them than put them in the boneyard, to be honest with you.
So giving a platform and the maintenance and everything else that's required to maintain that platform, it would be very expensive to most of these countries.
General.
No, the Secretary is exactly right. I mean, even if you gave the A-10s to a country, they would still have to pay to sustain them and upgrade them and keep them viable.
In 30 seconds, can you speak to combat search and rescue if we're giving up the A-10?
I do. I mean, the reason why the A-10 is really good at that is because it's a core mission of that platform. And as we transitioned with putting the A-10 in the retirement phase, there will be other platforms that it will become their core mission. And so F-35s, F-15s, other platforms have the capability.
So General, the A-10 pilots are specifically trained for combat search and rescue. Are we going to specifically train F-35 and other pilots for combat search and rescue? Because there have been questions about that.
Yeah, we'll have to. It's our mission.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Cisneros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. I'll get right into it. Mr. Secretary, I recently met with the California National Guard State Adjutant General and discussed the urgent need for fighter recapitalization. Several Air National Guard units, including a unit in California, are operating on aging F-15 fleet well beyond the projected service lives with critical shortfalls in spare parts and sustainment resources. What's the department's plan for recapitalizing these units, and what is the expected timeline for delivering replacement aircraft, the 144th in California?
So I think maybe what you're poking at is the delivery pace of the F-15EX, which is the primary replacement platform. We are focused on that. We are actually ramping up production to support replacement of the older F-15s with the newer, very, very capable F-15EX platform. We've been working very closely with the contractor Boeing. Matter of fact, they spent a day out at St. Louis just going through the detailed planning of how we're going to increase production of that platform and maintain schedule to basically replenish those aircraft. So I think we're making good progress, and it is a focus, and we are pushing hard to make sure that we get those planes replenished.
Well, our unit in California is still flying F-15Cs and Ds, and a lot of them are being, stripped for spare parts to keep other aircraft running. I hope we can get this going, but it's my understanding we're making about one F-15EX a day. If that's the case, we're going to have to speed that up quickly because we need these aircraft and other units need them as well.
So we're not making one a day. If we were making one a day, I'd be extremely happy, Congressman.
Oh, I'm sorry,
So
one a month.
Yeah,
One a month.
I know what you meant. Yeah, so we think we're going to get to 2 a month pretty quickly, and the contractor's supposed to come back with us in the next few weeks on a plan to get to 3 a month and then 4 a month to both support the U.S. and FMS sales. That's a platform that many of our international partners want to buy as well.
All right, thank you for that. General Saltzman, you Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, Benevegna. It said earlier this year that the Space Force is going to need to double in size. Now, I know you said in your opening statement that you're increasing by 27%, but that's well short of doubling in size. So as you kind of see it, as you're getting ready to retire, and thank you for your service, for your years of service, both in the Air Force and the Space Force, what is the plan going forward to kind of get to that point? If we do need to double in size, how long is it going to take us to get to that point?
Yes, sir. The 27% increase is just in 1 year.
Yeah.
We're going from 10,000, we're adding about 2,800 to that. So over 4 years, we think we're going to get close by the end of the decade to 20,000 active duty service members. So that's the plan. We just can't bring them all on at once because our training pipeline has to be able to support that. And quite frankly, the squadrons that we need to stand up aren't ready yet because the systems aren't on orbit. So it's about synchronizing it all over the next 4 or 5 years.
All right. Well, I think you'll have support from this committee if there's anything we can do to help speed up that process to get you there sooner, because it definitely is needed. Thank you. General Wilsbach, you made previous comments that the Air Force's prime objective is to fix and fly aircraft, which I agree with. Yet the Air Force carries responsibility for the land-based leg of our nuclear triad as well, the ICBM. The department notified Congress that the next generation ICBM is woefully over budget and behind schedule. So while the Air Force is struggling with pilot shortfalls and a fleet of aircraft that is aging rapidly, and it's even been suggested that maybe the Army should take over, that I've read in an article recently, that the Army should take over the ICBM program. What do you think needs to happen in order to kind of help support the ICBMs? Is this something we should turn over to the Army? Is it something that the Air Force can focus on while it's also focusing on the aircraft portion of its mission as well?
Well, thanks, Congressman. I don't think we should turn it over to the Army. I think the Air Force is capable and has shown that we've been operating the Minuteman for decades, and we can continue to transition to the Sentinel. The 27 budget has about $4.5 billion to continue to work the Sentinel program. I know we had a non-McCurdy breach earlier. We're restructuring that program, and it's on a better track now.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I think this is something that it definitely as part of the triad needs to be focused on, and we're going to have to rethink the triad going into the future. But thank you very much all for your answers today, and I yield back.
I would just say, if I can add, that nuclear deterrence, both from the air side of the house and the ICBM side of the house, as well as the nuclear command and control, that's provided by the Space Force in many respects is our number one priority. Nuclear deterrence is the mission we need to make sure we get right, and we're going to make sure we get it right.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary Mink, over here. I too want to congratulate General Saltzman on his retirement. And General Saltzman, thank you for your leadership and service. It's going to be sorely missed. I was pleased to see the significant increase in the Space Force budget. However, I was disappointed despite the overall increase, the commercial service budget request was half of last year's request. This line funds the Commercial Augmentation Space Reserve, and the Tactical Surveillance, Reconnaissance, and Tracking Pilot Program, and several other lines of effort that have been of interest to this committee. Can you walk me through the services plan to increase the use of commercial services as proposed by your commercial space strategy if it's not reflected in this budget line?
Yes, sir. I think we've demonstrated the capabilities of using commercial services in support of our missions, and now it's just about figuring out what those funding sources are. In fact, a lot of the combatant commands are paying the bill on commercial imagery as well as commercial satellite communications. And so I think if you look at the overall budget, you'd still see an increase in commercial services. But it's something that we're looking forward. We're evaluating whether this should be a program of record and whether that'll expand. But right now, our commercial space office is handling that marketplace, and we think sufficiently.
Okay, thank you. And Secretary Mink, this one is for you. While General White is responsible for the Air Force's highest profile nuclear modernization programs, Sentinel and B-21, the Air Force remains responsible for many others, such as the replacement cruise missile known as LRSO, as well as a myriad of NC-3 programs. Can you assure us that the Air Force will continue to prioritize these programs and that we won't take our eye off the ball as other parts of the Air Force nuclear portfolio are reassigned to General White?
So again, General White, absolutely, we will keep our eye on the ball on that. LRSO is actually one of those programs. I didn't mention it, but it is going very well. Program is properly structured in the beginning, and it is delivering actually at a very good cost point, not just from a schedule perspective, but a cost perspective. So we're very happy with that. And across the board, we will continue to support, even though Dale's got really special authority straight from the DepSecDef on acquisition. Those programs are still sitting in the Air Force, and we will work closely with him to make sure we deliver all of them.
Okay, well, staying on that topic of LRSO, as you may know, last year there was the miscommunication about the amount of funding necessary, which ultimately led to significant cuts to the program. This year, the budget request includes $565 million for research and development, in addition to $330 million procurement for it. I just wanted to confirm with you that this is the level of resourcing the Air Force needs to keep the program on track, and there is no margin for additional delay. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'm not sure how we ended up cross paths on that communication, but yeah, that did impact the program. Those lack of resources last year. So yes, those resources are absolutely required to keep that program on schedule. It's actually in a very sensitive period of its life where you're transitioning from the R&D phase of the program into production, as well as making sure that all the infrastructure is there to support it. So appreciate all your support.
Yeah, well, thank you. And this is the best performing nuclear modernization program in the Air Force. We need to ensure that the progress is not put in jeopardy by confusion about how the Air Force needs to keep executing it. So appreciate that. General Wilsbach, there have been a number of drone incursions at military bases across the country, and there is a wide concern for the threat of drones being used in attack on the homeland. What role does the Air National Guard play in detecting, tracking, and responding to unmanned aerial system threats within the homeland? And what additional capabilities or authorities are required to enhance this mission at the state level?
I think we're good on the authorities, but the Air National Guard, along with, frankly, all other department bases have the same responsibility, which is to defend their base. And the problems that we have right now are the capabilities that we have to detect the environment and then to do something about it. Many of the bases have non-kinetic capabilities that don't actually work against a lot of the drones. And so we've been rapidly, in the last few months, been rapidly fielding new capabilities to take care of this. We still need to continue to do that.
Anything Congress can do to help at this point?
The 27 budget addresses this.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many thanks to our witnesses today for your leadership to innovate and scale up our Air Force capabilities, as well as Space Force, protecting our assets above and keeping us safe here at home. And Secretary Mink, I'd be remiss if I didn't also congratulate the man to your left, General Saltzman, on your retirement. I am so incredibly proud to represent the Patriots working at the 182nd Airlift Wing in Peoria, Illinois. I wish we had C-130J models at the airfield today, but Central Illinois is thankful for all of your efforts to get us these new C-130Js at the 182nd. As we've seen with Operation Epic Fury, contingency response groups are critical to quickly opening airfields and ensuring that our airmen can smoothly enable theater logistics. Whether it's a dirt field in the middle of nowhere, an abandoned runway somewhere, or at the site of a recent weather disaster, a contingency response group can make sure that our service members can land safely and begin carrying out operations right away. I'm so thrilled that the Air Force decided to stand up a contingency response group within the 182nd in Peoria. Our Guard members in Peoria are the best of the best. So there's no one better to kick off operations. I could talk about them all day, but I'm concerned with how this CRG conversion is going. We're 1 year into a 3-year conversion, and there's no funding for equipment or manning. So to the Secretary, what are we doing to ensure that the 182nd, as well as the 5 Air National Guard units converting to CRGs, can complete the conversion and become mission ready?
If it's all right, Congressman, I think I'll hand that off to the chief.
Thank you.
For the specifics of the exact funding, let me come back to you, and I'll give you a written report of how we intend to do that, because I don't know the exact specifics for that wing.
All right, I appreciate that. It's something that we should get figured out. It's been years in the making.
Concur.
In terms of personnel, the 182nd was sourced with 125 positions. As you know, 175 are needed to complete a CRG unit. What more can we do together to ensure that we've got those 50 additional personnel on the ground?
So we'll make sure that the appropriate personnel are there as we start to transition. And if there's a shortfall, we'll come back to you and work with you on that as well.
General?
And the 27 budget also allows for an end strength increase for the Air Force. And so when we say we'll make sure you have the people, it also needs to be funded, and we are funded in the 27 budget request for that. So it'll be helpful to be able to plus that up.
Great, I appreciate that. To General Stoltzman and to Mr. Menk, earlier you mentioned the need for another launch site for Space Force. How important are horizontal launch points, and how can we expedite their development?
I'm sorry, Congressman, when you say horizontal launch points, you don't mean air-based launch systems, or are you talking about the horizontal versus vertical integration?
Forgive me for merging a little bit of the SST committee that I've been working on in the past, but to develop a horizontal launch point to get the things that we build into space. Right, so we've got a space that is outside the busy O'Hare and Midway airspace, but it is the epicenter of where we build all of the critical industrial and advanced manufacturing. How do we get it up where we need it? Is there a way that we could utilize horizontal launches as opposed to vertical launches, and how can we work together on it?
So we probably have a long discussion on this. Those have been looked at back and forth. Both the commercial industry and the government is, from a cost effectiveness perspective, they've gone to vertical launch. As a matter of fact, even vertical landing. There are many contractors, not just SpaceX, but Blue and others, are doing the vertical landing. That just appeared to, at least now, the state of the technology as the most efficient way to launch. Saying that is like I said, there is an additional probably launch facility required to support the large rockets, which is harder to find than to support the smaller rockets. And that's something we're going to have to be working with Congress and the states to figure out going forward. Salty?
I think airborne launch is as close as we've come, I've seen, to demonstrating some sort of horizontal launch capability. And it does provide some agile flexibility for launches, but payloads are reduced at this point, and so we just haven't seen it be able to produce the kinds of efficiencies that both vertical launch and vertical reusable launch has achieved.
Well, just because of where we are, I hope that the Quad Cities could be part of that discussion. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, General Bacon.
Thank you. Thanks to all three of you for being here. General Saltzman, congratulations. I retired in 2014. Now I'm starting to think about a third career, so you got a lot of runway ahead of you. And I appreciate all three of you. My first question is to the Secretary. I wanted to verify some statements that were made in the Senate in the recent weeks. First, and by the way, these are very positive developments in my mind, that you said that the Air Force will be building towards 22 EA-37s. Is that correct?
The EA-37Bs?
Yes.
Referring to? Yes, we've expanded within this budget submission across the FIDEP. We've expanded the number of 37Bs, correct?
This is an incredible milestone. I've been working this for a long time. I flew in the earlier versions for 11 years, but we're going to finally produce a capability that our warfighters say they need. And, you know, electronic warfare saves lives, makes it easier to penetrate air defenses. And so I just, well, I applaud the decision. I mean, when I came here, it was 6, and we had a hard time getting those numbers up. So this has been a 10-year project from our office, so I am thrilled. Thank you. I also wanted to verify that the Looking Glass mission is being moved back to the Air Force. Let me just, for those who aren't familiar with the Looking Glass mission, it's a nuclear command and control platform, airborne platform that provides survivability if the White House is hit, the Pentagon's hit, or STRATCOM, and it ensures that we can launch our ICBMs even if we get decapitated on the ground. I think it's a very important capability, especially as Russia and China rebuilds. But I just wanted to verify that this is coming back to the Air Force.
Yes, Congressman, it is, and we are in the process of working with our partners at Stratton and other places to refine the requirements, really to get to something that's affordable and we can deliver fairly quickly. But yes, an important mission.
Well, this is another huge milestone from my vantage point. I've been working this too for a decade in Congress. You know, when we have these airplanes on a 15-minute alert, we have weapons that can hit us in 15 minutes. So I felt like we needed to increase our capability here, our readiness to more quickly respond, and I think we're going the right direction. Russia and China must know that no matter what they do, we have our ability to launch 400 ICBMs and submarine missiles and really to use our deterrence capabilities. General Wilsbach, of the 10,200 sorties and over 13,500 strikes in Epic Fury, but how much of this was Air Force? And you talked a little bit about the Air Force accomplishments.
Probably the real answer to that is classified. So maybe we can get together in a closed session. But we have flown a lot of sorties, and we've dropped a lot of munitions. And I'm very proud of the effort that the airmen have done. And this conflict has been somewhat different than others in that almost everybody involved were under fire the whole time. And they had to still continue to generate sorties, which they did heroically.
We actually had to train, or we had to fight like we've been training for a long time, which under fire at our airfields. That's, I remember doing that myself in training. How did the F-35 perform?
It performed really well, and there's a lot of news on low aircraft availability rates, but the ones that we sent forward were running near standards as far as availability rate went. It was also extremely effective from the standpoint of hitting its target and surviving in some very high threat environments.
Last question, I'd like to ask about the B-21. Recently, we've decided we're going to go from 100 to maybe 145. Just how important is the B-21 capability, in your view, for the future?
Yes, so as you know, as you stated, the program of record is 100 aircraft. There's been multiple opinions that we need more. I think we're probably going to need more. We're going to have to do a study and certainly work with STRATCOM and Air Force Global Strike to figure out what that number is. One of the things, though, that's important if we do decide to build more is Northrop's ability to build them at scale and pace.
Okay. General Saltzman, the budget requests huge increases in manpower for the Space Force, which is good. But given the current training pipelines and base level infrastructure, how easily are you going to be able to assimilate the added manpower and the added capabilities?
We've got good planning for FY27. Our Air Force partners have been great in terms of being able to take that on at both BMT and officer sessions. So I think we're good for FY27. We will have to invest additional resources as we get closer to the 2030 timeframe. We'll start to exceed the capacity and we'll have to expand it.
With that, I yield.
Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. General, we will miss you very much, and thank you for your faithful service to our country over all these years. I want to start with the budget, because that's what you're here to make the case for. A $338.8 billion budget. As you pointed out, it's a $92.5 billion increase from last year, so 38%. As I look at those numbers on this committee, when we talk about a $1.5 trillion defense budget, sometimes these numbers can become abstractions, but I think about this in very concrete terms. We're talking about a sum of money, the increase alone, bigger than the market value of some big companies in this country, bigger than the annual GDP of some of our NATO allies, and it certainly vastly exceeds the annual budget of most states in this great nation, including my home state of New Hampshire. Your increase alone would cover 10 years of the state of New Hampshire's budget, our public schools, our state police officers, roads and bridges. So this is no small request. So I want to ask you, Mr. Secretary, a question I asked you last year. Is the Air Force on track to pass a clean audit this year?
The direction we were given, not this year, the direction we were given was by 28, but we intend to do it by the end of 27. So we are pushing hard to actually meet kind of the direction we were given, which is by FY28. So we are pushing hard and we're making good progress, right? And I agree with you, Congresswoman. It's a lot of money. I see it as one of my core jobs is to make sure we effectively spend those resources to increase national security now and for decades to come.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, you pointed out last year where you were previously, you were in a place where failing an audit was not an option. And that is the spirit I hope you'll continue to bring to the Air Force, because public trust depends on clean audits across the Pentagon. So I look forward. I'll follow up with some questions for the record. We want to support you in this effort in every way that we can. And I'm grateful for what you've said about being a custodian of taxpayer dollars. When I think about where we can crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse, I'm thinking a lot about the GAO weapons system annual assessment that I took a look at. When you look at lag times, delays, and cost overruns, the report from June of last year pointed to $49 billion in cost overruns, the vast majority of which, $36 billion, was attributed to the Sentinel program. And when I look at what we can do to keep our systems on track and our costs in alignment, you know, the president issued an executive order earlier this year that goes to what I think is really the source of some of our trouble. Stock buybacks, dividend payouts, and exorbitant executive salaries in some of these big defense companies. So I want to ask you how the implementation of the president's executive order is going, and I want to know if you think this is something Congress should codify. There's bipartisan support for this because at the end of the day, it makes no sense for our government to be forking over trillions of taxpayer dollars to big companies while their executives are receiving exorbitant pay. They are using this money to buy back their own company's stocks instead of investing in our warfighter and our national defense. So could you speak to the implementation of this executive order?
I'll try to be quick because I could talk about this for at least an hour.
Well, I look forward to sitting down with you and talking to you about it.
I think you're hitting on a lot of very important points. First off, absolutely, could Congress be helpful? Right to repair, data rights, any congressional, and we'd be happy to work on that.
So I take it you support our Warrior Right to Repair Act?
And also additional, like with getting access to data just across the board, we think is important, and sometimes this is the area where we would actually like help from the Hill. So I'd be happy to continue to work with you on that. With respect to kind of the EO, absolutely, the defense industry in general has taken notice of that. The Deputy Secretary of War, Secretary of War, and the Deputy Secretary of War Feinberg and Secretary Hegseth have been very supportive of us in basically really making the contractors meet what they're signing up to, right? So we are pushing hard also to make them make investments in facilitization and the other things that are necessary for them to deliver capability. But at the same time, just as importantly, we are pushing hard to grow that industry base. Some of the much lower cost, more rapid automated production systems are really paying great dividends, right? We're seeing a lot of some of the low-cost cruise missiles. I've been very, very impressed with that. And I would just say, we talk a lot about Sentinel and some of the other programs. When I opened my opening statement, I made a statement that we've shortchanged because of the lowest investment we've had from a GDP perspective in many decades. We shortchanged O&M, but we also shortchanged modernization. What I say by that is when I look at the restructure of the Sentinel program, the initial figure we went in for that program was totally unexecutable. We were making very unrealistic, because of the restricted budget we were trying to operate under, we made a very large number of super aggressive assumptions on how efficiently we could execute the program, which were really not doable, right? So we are making a conscious effort to not let that happen. So when we come to you and tell you what something's going to cost, that's what it's going to cost, right? And so that
What a
doing
relief.
that across the
Thank
board.
you.
Generally, time has
Appreciate that.
expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to congratulate you all on the joint service op, Absolute Resolve. It was really epic, Radon and Entebbe historic. So very well done, and congratulations, General, and thank you for your service to the Republic. Wanted to touch on 4 things real quickly. Mr. Secretary, I wanted to visit with you about recruiting. It was an issue that under the prior administration, we weren't hitting recruiting goals year over year, and now we have. We've turned that corner, and just wanted to visit with you very quickly on your plan to continue to make sure that we're ever vigilant, because if we don't hit those numbers, we're in a world of hurt.
So I have to say I feel extremely lucky to be Secretary of the Air Force. I think we hit our recruiting goals 5 months early. For 5 months prior to the end of the year, we have almost a couple years of actually backlog of recruits waiting to come into the department. So it's a really good problem to have, and we're really getting the talent too. So we're going to continue to push on that, and a big part of that is just making sure that and the country sees it, that how important the Department of the Air Force is, both space and air, to our national security, and then when we get them in, make their job interesting and rewarding and good quality life, good quality service. So across the board, we're working on that.
General Wilsbach, can you talk to me about the pilot shortage and what we're doing there to address it, and what can Congress do to help you mitigate that issue?
You're helping with one aspect, and that is the ability to do the max amount on the bonus, the pilot bonus, which is effective. Another aspect that we're looking at is more flying, and so this 27 budget gets us about $10 billion for flying. The pilots want to fly. They don't want to sit on the ground and do admin. So more flying hours keeps them in. And then the last piece is quality of life things like ability to stay at their duty locations for longer periods of time versus moving every 2 or 3 years. And so those 3 things are the features that we think are going to help us with pilot retention, and that'll in turn help with the pilot shortage. In addition to that, we're meeting our goals for creating 1,500 pilots per year. We did that this year.
I was going to ask that next. Yeah.
Yep, we did that this year, and we see no issues with doing that into the future. And the challenge will be absorbing all those into line cockpits.
Okay. Congressman Jackson's not here, but NJEPT, I was stationed at Shepherd, so that's in his district, and it used to be in my state Senate district, so it's close and near and dear to my heart. General Saltzman, wanted to just visit with you a little bit on the importance of not only what we're doing in space, but in your department as far as cyber as well. And talk about maybe if there's things that Congress can do, or hear your thoughts on recruiting not just military personnel to the cyber realm, but also civilians that may be really talented at what we need them to do, but may not quite conform to wearing a uniform, if you know what I mean.
Well, thank you. Cyber is critical. In fact, it's indistinguishable from space operations. If you can't control the networks that distribute the data, you can't do the space missions. So we take it very seriously. In fact, in Ukraine, the Russians, their first attack was a ground attack, cyber attack against a Viasat network. So if you're vulnerable in the network, you're vulnerable on orbit as well. So we take it very seriously. We're doing a couple of things. One, enhancing the cyber training from a defensive network standpoint, making sure that we have sensors in all of our mission systems so that we can rapidly see if there's any problems or any kind of activities on our mission systems. That's important work. We've got 2 programs of record that we're trying to fully fund to make sure that we have rapid response to any intrusions on our network systems, especially those mission systems. But we're also trying to gain access to the kind of expertise in the civilian world that you mentioned by giving constructive credit. So if you join the Space Force, you have cyber credibility from the outside. We try to give you that in terms of promotions early. So we might bring you in as a captain or a major. And so several of our officers have been brought in at accelerated rank because of the credibility they brought from the outside. So it's
like we do with medical.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And I got a little bit of time left, Mr. Secretary. I wanted to talk to you about the plane that will not die, the A-10. I remember almost maybe it was 30 years ago, there was a plan to mothball it, and yet it's still here and it still has use. How do you see us using the A-10 in the future?
Again, I asked for a little help from the chief here, but generally it's in the combat search and rescue role is its primary role right now. It is a great platform, and we're going to keep it around. Really, in many cases, to provide that capability and not have a loss of capability as we replace it with even more combat effective aircraft.
And I would say we can use it in a more permissive environments, in really high threat environments. We are challenged with having it survive, and so we would need to have it be in a permissive environment.
It's kind of like the linebacker of the skies, you know. Just anyway, real tough.
When I was in college and thought I might get a pilot slot, I did not. But the A-10 was actually the aircraft I wanted to fly. So that tells you a bit how long that platform's been around.
And Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I yield back. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. General Saltzman, thank you for your 3.5 decades and your families of service to this country. We greatly appreciate it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to pass along to your successor. I want to align myself with Congressman Whitman's comments about Wallops Island in Virginia. While it's in his Commonwealth, about half of the employees live in Maryland. And so anything that we can do to be supportive of trying to alleviate some of the pressure on the other assets that you have with Wallops, I want to be a part of that team. So I appreciate that. I do want to, gentlemen, just touch on the fuel spill at Joint Base Andrews just briefly. 22,000 gallons of jet fuel flowing through a creek into the Potomac. Obviously, nobody wants that in their district, in their community, in their state. I do want to thank you both. Your staff has made themselves available to my office on many occasions to brief us on this. I know we're still kind of searching for some answers, and while the investigation's underway, if I could have you both commit to me to brief the full Maryland delegation when that investigation is complete.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Just lessons learned, I think, are going to be important here to prevent this from happening in future communities. I wanted piggyback on the comments about cyber. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for sitting down with the Maryland delegation last year to talk about the cyber wing for our air national defense in Maryland. I've been toying with whether I should use this pun, but we have to land that plane still in Maryland. And so we need to make sure that MILCON is there, that we're actually building out the necessary home for that cyber wing, as we all acknowledge cyber is becoming more and more important with every passing mission for all of our services. I'm a little concerned, though, we're not quite behind the ball, but I need to hear both from you about what we can do to get that MILCON in line. The planning is about, I believe it's about 15% right now. We need to get it to 35 as quickly as possible, get that on the ground, and then grow that cyber mission. If either of you have any thoughts on that.
So I believe we've actually received the 35% design build package, and we are going through the process of reviewing that package. So I think that's actually, at least the feedback I got yesterday was that package is in pretty good shape. So we believe we're on track to do that. They're working how they're going to do the training for the unit, do that transition, and as you mentioned, as we've all mentioned, cyber is critically important, and we want to make sure we get that done.
I had a note here that said it was completion due in May, so I guess I'm just a day late.
Yes, we're in May.
Okay, thank you, and of course we want to work with you to land that plane. Following up on the Warthog, unfortunately Maryland lost our A-10s as we're gaining the cyber mission, which is very important. But I do, especially since we had Admiral Cooper here yesterday talking about the A-10s and their unique capability, particularly for him in CENTCOM right now. And I'm worried about this gap that we might have in capability. You mentioned, adding that capability to other aircraft, but can you give us or this committee a sense of, do you appreciate that there could be a gap, and how are we going to make sure that we are being seamless in that capability?
Right, so the mission of the A-10 is close air support. Part of that subset of close air support is combat search and rescue. And we can do close air support, and we can do combat search and rescue support from other platforms. And it's unacceptable to have a gap. If you have somebody down behind enemy lines like we saw with Dude 44 Bravo, you have to go get them. It's our,
exactly.
I mean, it's our duty. Right, so we will not have a gap in support to CSAR.
And I would say the extension, working with the President and Secretary, the extension, and then with support from the Congress, the extension of the A10 units, basically slowing down the retirement of those, allows us to make sure that we don't have a break in that capability.
Well, there's nothing like it's great, but plan in the budget is even better. And so making sure we are actually funding that training.
So this 27 budget has $10 billion for flying hours. In those flying hours, we can train to this mission.
Okay, I appreciate that. I had one further question, but I'll submit it for the record, just around stormwater stormwater funding for flooding across all of our bases. It's incredibly challenging, and it's kind of pushing out many other priority MILCON projects when we have to address flooding on the ground right now. But we will submit it for the record. So with that, I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Finstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our great leaders here today. General Saltzman, thank you for having us at your retirement party. It's great to be here. Thank you for your service. Really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you and to learn from you and to really see your leadership in action. So congratulations on a great career. Minnesota is home to some of our nation's most dedicated and effective guardsmen and women. The 148th Fighter Wing is consistently one of the top performing wings in the Air Guard, and it's consistently and constantly called upon to support overseas missions. Unfortunately, the Guard is sometimes overlooked by the DOW, despite their involvement in every major conflict, and more recently, Operations Midnight Hammer, Absolute Resolve, and Epic Fury. Excuse me. Secretary Menk, I want to thank you for finalizing the OP 1617 basing criteria and for putting such an emphasis on unit performance and airspace. I think it is common sense that our best equipment is most utilized when put in the hands of our top soldiers. Airspace plays such a crucial role in training and evaluating units. These developments are greatly appreciated. So with that, I believe it's important, I believe an important consideration is strategic location of our fighter wings, although it's not mentioned in the criteria. So Secretary Menk, when developing these criteria, did you or your staff have any discussions about the importance of aerospace control alert detachments, particularly in the northern tier?
Yeah, and there was a discussion, and I'm going to go back and take an even closer look to make sure that we've captured what kind of, I think you're pulling out a little bit here. But under strategic alignments, units pulling that type of alert actually can get points during the scoring. I think it's also important that as we go through the scoring, the wing commander and the adjutant general have an opportunity to look at how we're doing that to make sure that we're doing it right. So I think we've captured that, but I will go back and make sure that we didn't miss them.
I appreciate that. In the criteria for the OP 1617, the specific details for several capacity categories, such as munition storage, weapon space, they're not clearly defined, and this makes it difficult to understand how inclusive the CAT codes will be. Do you have the details for those CAT codes readily available? And if not, would you be willing to commit to transmitting them to my office?
I can commit to providing that information, but again, I believe that in my review yesterday that all those things are actually captured within the criteria, but I'll make sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I do realize this is hot off the press information, but the 148th and the folks in Minnesota are obviously very aware and in tune with what's going on here, and I want to be as helpful as I can be to my constituents.
And again, I'll go take a look, but the things that you mentioned are pretty much core things we look at. So I just want to make sure that I understand how they're being captured, but I'm pretty confident they are.
Yeah, just for, just to get this in your mind, the 148th Minnesota, just keep saying that to yourself. We really value the men and women that are in the 148th and what they bring not only to the state of Minnesota, but to our defense space nationwide, worldwide, and really honored to represent those folks. And so I appreciate your service, appreciate this hearing today. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Vindman.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to also thank you, General Saltzman, for your decades of honorable service to this country and I appreciated meeting you last year, and you lead an amazing and really a portion of the military that is absolutely indispensable in modern warfare. And I'm proud of the work that the Space Force does and the Delta that's stationed at Dahlgren Naval Base. So thank you for that. Secretary Mink, thank you for your response to the bipartisan letter that Rep. Turner and I sent to you regarding the Ukrainian F-16 program. I want to give you an opportunity in this open setting to update the committee on where things stand. And can you speak to how the SAF-IA is functioning as a single point of contact and whether that designation has improved coordination with DSCA, state, and European partners?
My understanding is it has improved and that those discussions are going well. It's obviously there's still work to be done, but I think the coordination is good.
Okay. So our letter flagged specific munitions shortfalls affecting F-16's operational impact. And without getting into sensitive details, can you speak generally to whether deliveries are moving in the right direction, either from the United States or from NATO partners, and what role this budget plays in sustaining that momentum?
Yeah, so I can't probably dive into the sensitive details here, but what I would say is that we've leaned a way forward in supporting the Deputy Secretary of War and with it to all the requests that we're getting out of Ukraine. Chief, do you have any additional?
No, I mean, it's a balancing act, our priorities, because not only are we helping Ukraine, but our other allies in the Middle East as well are getting munitions, so we're balancing all those requests from our partners.
Thank you for that. Sounds like there is movement in the right direction. So I want to turn my attention now, General Wilsbach, to the flying hours program. And so the FY27 budget is a $1.8 billion increase to that program. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And that program sustains 1.1 million flying hours?
Correct.
Across critical missions as 300,000 hours for training platforms like the T-7, 230,000 almost for combat Air Force platforms like F-22 and F-35, and then 306,000 for the global mobility. Is that accurate?
I'd have to go back and look exactly at those. They're in the ballpark.
Okay, I think those are generally accurate. I mean, 1.8 billion is a lot of money, and the reason why that amount struck me is because the president sued his own government and then directed his attorney general to settle the lawsuit for that exact amount of money. And I've been getting phone calls, actually, for the last day or so, dozens of phone calls about this Friends and Family Slush Fund. And, General, I fear that given that we have a finite amount of money in our budget, that we may not be able to provide the hundreds of thousands of hours, flying hours for readiness, because they're going to a slush fund. We have a finite amount of money, American taxpayer, hard-earned money going into the government fisc, could be spent on national security, which is a measure like this, literally 1.8 billion, the same amount of money. It could be spent on health care. It could be spent on food nutrition programs. That's a significant amount of money. Unfortunately, this president, in an act of corruption I think never before seen in the history of this country, has decided to create a Friends and Family Slush Fund. And oh, by the way, as part of the settlement, also directed his own attorney general to never investigate him or his two sons' business. So that $1.8 billion of taxpayer money has been allocated, and I'm not sure we have it in the budget. But thank you. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Guam, Mr. Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our panel, sir. Mr. Secretary, got a little story there. I remember what we went through, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you folks, and I thank you for your service to our nation, our states, and our territories, and the homeland. So thank you so much. But Mr. Secretary, I appreciate you coming on out to Guam. I think it was early on in your assignment. It was one of your first trips, and we had the opportunity to literally hang out together in the back of a plane, open bay, and just dangling our feet out there as we traveled across the islands. That was a good experience for you, I hope, and I did that once, and I'm good. So, but I appreciate you coming on out and realizing the importance of the islands. And you were able to also see the massive buildup we're having there. And I'm sure you understand the importance of our workforce, since we don't get it from the mainland. And our workforce is not there with the visa waivers as apple pickers. We have H-1 workforce there, skilled engineers and doctors and nurses that we rely on because of our shortage of expertise, and H-2B workers there as well during the buildup and construction that we got going. But yet we have difficulties maintaining our long-term. We had to go back and forth with our different budgets that we have to ensure we can have them in the long run too for the completion of this important mission for the success of our nation. And most recently, we have some issue with our H-1. I understand we want U.S. workers, of course, to be hired in the U.S., but unfortunately, we don't have that luxury on Guam, your most western soil, so close out there to Asia and in the Pacific, and it costs an additional $100,000 for now the H-1s to come and get reassigned, and it plays a big role with our contractors that are on base and building, and it's just going to increase the costs, which will be passed on to the Department of War, or the different branches as well. So I just your opinion on also the importance that we maintain this workforce, and what projects do you see them assigned to, and the importance of us continuing that workforce, Mr. Secretary?
So I don't think I could go into the specifics on what projects they would be assigned to. Obviously, Guam is going to continue to be a critically important location for us, as you know very well, the amount of capability we have there and the amount of additional capability, and it just as geographic location would be critical in how we talk about agile combat employment. So we are willing to, I'm willing to work with you however we can help on the workforce and what other innovative things we can do from a military construction and FSRM out there. So really appreciate your support and be happy to work with you on that. Right?
Thank you very much. General Wilsback, speaking of FSRM and MILCON, in the FY27 budget, there's that increase, of course, and looking at Andersen Air Force Base for Guam, the strategic location, the importance, the most western soil. How much of that increased funding do you see going to Andersen Air Force Base, and what projects could you highlight for us?
I'll have to get first of all, half a day, but I'll have to get you the details for Andersen specific. In general, what I would like to see at Andersen is things that help us to improve the readiness of the island and also of our base there at Andersen.
Thank you. Final question, General Saltzman. I remember the first day I saw you, I said, this guy is sharp, man. And still this day, you're still very sharp. I appreciate your service, sir. Also, the other day we heard from Centricom, and they said how important it was for our Space Force to be part of that. And I'm hoping that Indo-PACOM, that's the same importance that we have there. So for in Guam, you know, we had the Marine Corps, we got the Navy, we got the Air Force, we have the Army, Coast Guard, Merchant Marines, but we don't have Space Force there. You know, if you think in just a couple of seconds there, is that something we can see for the build out that you're planning to come to Guam?
We're hard to see sometimes in plain sight, but we do have capability there. We don't have a lot of people necessary, but we have the remote tracking stations there at Guam, and we plan to put additional capabilities there as well. So Space Force presence is definitely on Guam. It's strategic for us as well.
Thank you.
Sir, yeah, I've had a chance to visit with several of the Guardians in Guam, and we are there. We're gonna grow it though. With that, Chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. General, I echo my colleagues' remarks. Thank you for your service. I'm proud that my district has become a major hub for the development and production of some of our nation's most advanced aircraft, as well as cutting-edge UAS and counter-UAS capabilities. We're proud to have Scott Air Force Base just across the Mississippi River, home to Air Mobility Command, the major command responsible for providing global airlift, aerial refueling, aeromedical evacuation, and mobility support operations that rapidly project and sustain U.S. military forces worldwide. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the St. Louis region is a sleeping giant. St. Louis is already playing a leading role in supporting our national security today, while also helping develop and produce the solutions needed to address the threats of tomorrow. Aircraft development and production remain an anchor of our economy and industrial base, but defense technology, AI, GeoINT, and advanced capabilities are increasingly at the center of that growth. At a time when our Air Force and installations across the Middle East face persistent threats from small and medium-sized drones, recognizing, investing in, and accelerating these capabilities is more important now than ever. The Air Force has a responsibility to keep aircraft, munitions, fuel, and command nodes protected so it can continue generating combat power even under persistent drone attack. We need field-ready capabilities that can move quickly, integrate seamlessly, and protect high-value assets now. Secretary Mink and General Wilsbach, the Army has worked with a variety of industry partners to develop potential counter-UAS solutions, including the Mobile Low, Slow, Small, Unmanned Aircraft Integrated Defeat System. Will you commit to accelerating the fielding of proven mobile counter-UAS capabilities, leveraging work already being done across the Joint Force, and assure this committee that the department is prioritizing rapid and scalable deployment using existing production-ready systems?
Yes, Congressman, I appreciate your emphasis on this. I've been talking about this for years. And in fact, in Epic Fury, we actually did leverage some of the Army programs and put them at air bases.
Thank you.
It needs to be, again, nuclear deterrence and cyber are some of the biggest threats that we face, but defending our air bases, not only overseas, but in the homeland is becoming an increasing high priority. And we are working closely with OSD, OSD and Joint Staff to in the various task forces that we've set up to really focus on delivering this capability. And I think we agree 100% is the Airmen Guardians have a responsibility to defend our air bases, defend our forces, regardless of where they are. And we are focusing on all the way from electronic warfare to directed energy to kinetic capabilities to defend our Airmen and Guardians.
Secretary Mink and General Wilsbach again. Recent reporting and the President's budget requests indicate that the Air Force is looking to expand the Plan 15EX Eagle II fleet to help maintain fighter capacity during the transition to next generation platforms. Can you discuss the role F-15EX is expected to play in the Air Force's broader fighter roadmap?
Yes, Congressman. The F-15EX will be an air superiority fighter, and it's actually not necessarily a bridge to something else. It's to fill in a gap. Most of our 5th and 6th gen, or all of our 5th gen and 6th gen aircraft carry their weapons internally, which negates the ability to carry really big weapons, and that's what the F-15 does. And so the F-15EX will be an air superiority aircraft that will be able to carry really long-range missiles, and it also will have an air-to-ground capability as well. And it can carry, just like the F-15E, can carry some very heavy munitions, and so we get some big bang for our buck there.
My time is up, so I'll submit my questions, but thank you all. You back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Appreciate your time. Before we get started, General, I want to also thank you for taking time to meet with the Shepherd Military Affairs Committee and members of the Wichita Falls community during their recent D.C. fly-in. That was much appreciated. Thank you. During my most recent visit at Air Force Base, a pressing issue came to my attention. Currently, Air Force Installation Unit Manpower Document authorizations, the UMD, primarily reflect permanently assigned personnel, and there is no requirement to account for the sustained support demands generated by large rotational student populations. As a result, major training installations like Shepherd, which produces 48% of our tech training graduates and 50% of all U.S. fighter pilots, experience severe manpower shortfalls relative to their actual day-to-day workload. For example, the 82nd Medical Group at Shepherd must provide care for more than half of the Air Force's annual throughput of airmen in training, as well as for student pilots in the Euro-NATO Jet Pilot Training Program. Yet none of these rotational trainees are captured in the base's UMD authorizations. General, is the Air Force open to a new approach that properly resources the workload generated by rotational student populations? Specifically, what are your thoughts on integrating an installation's average daily load, the ADL, the steady state population physically present and requiring installation support, into UMD authorizations to improve manpower planning for essential services like housing, medical care, logistics, security, and base operations?
Yes, Congressman, agree. They do have a lot of folks there, and in fact, just in March, we authorized some special pay increases for the staff that's there at Shepherd, so that we can keep more people there, so that they can support the base. It's a 35% increase for GS 11 and 12, and then a lesser increase for higher rank structures. But agree with you that we need to do something, and these measures will help us with that, to keep the base population that's there working while we have additional people there going through training.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's key. I mean, paying them more money. My second question is going to address a little bit of that as well. But we need more bodies too. I think, just with my previous example, with having been in the medical corps for a while, it's difficult to retain people when they're in that environment where they're so overwhelmed with the number of people that they're responsible for every day, because they're just short bodies. So yeah,
Agreed. And the 27 budget also allows for an increase in the total and strength of the Air Force. And as we look at where there are needs, because we'll have those extra bodies that will be funded, we'll be able to apply those in places where we're shorthanded.
Perfect. I got one more quick question here, and then I have two questions I'm going to submit for the record for you, Mr. Secretary. But I'm increasingly concerned by the declining manning levels for the civilian simulator instructors, particularly at Shepherd Air Force's base's 80th Flying Training Wing, home to the Euro-NATO Jet Pilot Training Program. An aging workforce and rising retirements are creating critical shortages of these instructors, directly threatening our pilot generation pipeline. Because these GS positions compete directly with the private sector, namely commercial aviation and advanced tech industry, stark pay and benefit disparities, as well as slow hiring timelines, severely limit the Air Force's ability to recruit talent. Left unaddressed, this shortage will force reductions in class loading, worsening the Air Force's broader pilot shortfall. Mr. Secretary, are you and your team aware of this growing challenge, and how can the Air Force, whether through direct hire authority, expanded use of special salary rates, recruitment incentives, retention allowances, or other targeted hiring flexibilities, mitigate this issue and help ensure consistent instructor manning at critical training installations like Shepherd?
Yeah, thanks, Congressman. I think I'd point at two things. The first is we're actually delegating civilian hiring authority down to the center level or below in some cases to actually accelerate across the board hiring and make that easier and faster so that when people do apply, they're not sitting around forever waiting to get picked up. And then secondly, as General Wilsbach mentioned, we are looking at incentive bonuses or incentive pay across the ranks to bring people on and keep them.
Yes, sir. I think that's going to be key, and I'm willing to help in any way I can in making that happen. I'll have two questions I'm going to submit for the record. One is related to the MH139 and the plan to put H60s into a program here to shuttle folks around in the NCR. And the last question will involve the T7, but I don't have time to ask these questions, so I'll submit these for the record. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to all of you for joining today. Appreciate your service and your testimony. A special thank you to General Saltzman for your long and honorable and incredible career in service to the country. And as a founding chair of the Space Force Caucus, it's been a real delight to work with you, actually, over the last couple of years. We haven't always agreed, but we've done great work together. We've had some good debates together, but you always come informed, committed, transparent, and I can always work with that. So grateful for your work. So for old time's sake, you know I have to raise LP 480, which was one of those things we disagreed on, and Secretary Mink. I lost that battle. I fought it on a bipartisan basis. Every tag, every governor joined me and expressed some concerns about it. You all got it passed in the NDAA, so now we're just trying to implement it the best we can and address it. And one of the concerns that the tags and governors and we raised was this issue of some guardsmen and women falling through the cracks. And unfortunately, that is actually happening a little bit in the states. So I sent you a letter, Secretary Mink, May 18th. Every member of the Colorado delegation, Republican and Democrat, signed on to this and joined me because we have almost 400 guardsmen and women who are kind of in limbo now, many of whom haven't been remissioned, who have decided not to join the Space Force, who are committed to the state mission. You know, these are citizen soldiers, and a lot of them are really committed to being citizen soldiers and want to do the state mission as well as the federal, and they just don't want to be in the Space Force for a variety of reasons. So can I have your commitment, Secretary, that you'll look at this letter, that you'll respond to it, and you'll work with us to try to figure out how we can get these guardsmen and women missions and get them working and keep everyone happy?
So I'll look at the letter, Congressman, and I know we've had a number of discussions on this, but I do want to reiterate that the state will not lose guard positions. Those billets are staying there. I think what you're poking at a little bit is we need to get on with that remissioning to just make people have a better understanding of where they fit and how they want to participate. So we're working with the local guards to do that, not just Colorado, but across the board. But again, I want to reiterate that the states are not losing billets with respect to guards. Those who didn't transfer, those billets are staying. We just need to get them remission to get the people back to work.
I appreciate that. And there's actually no dispute. I'm not disputing your commitment to that, but we just want to get them working. We want to get them a mission. We've lost 14 of them, is my understanding already, to retirements, them saying, I'm not going to just sit around and not do anything, transferred to other units. We just want to make sure we're doing right by them and their families and giving them some certainty. So I appreciate that commitment. The last piece, Secretary Mink, is Buckley Space Force Base has been selected as a preferred site for the nuclear microreactor as part of the Air Force's Advanced Nuclear Power Installations Initiative. This is exciting. This is something that I've supported the research and development on. Obviously, power is a problem, and ratepayers in Colorado, like many places, pay way too much. And taking Buckley's energy off of the grid will help relieve ratepayer pressure and also assure resiliency. But we do want to make sure it's the right thing. Because you talk about microreactors, understandably, everyone in the community has questions and they want engagement. And I raised my kids just a couple of miles from Buckley as well. So the bottom line is I want to be able to support this. This is a good initiative, but I just want the Air Force's commitment that you'll work with us, my office, and the senators' offices in Colorado to do robust community engagement. I think this is key, is making sure we're meeting with the local counties, the cities, city councilors, the neighborhood associations to put information out there, answer people's questions, and just do really robust engagement on the front end so that uncertainty and any anxiety about this is addressed.
Absolutely willing to work with you on that and in the communication plans. I'm a big supporter. I believe in many ways that's the future. I was actually out in California last week and spent a few hours with the contractor that's delivering that reactor, Radiant. It's about as safe as power source as you can come up with. It's just amazing the levels of safety they have just inherent within that approach. I'd put it outside my house.
Great.
No problem.
I understand that it's small enough you can hug it, although that's not recommended.
It's not quite that small.
Okay.
But actually, you could hug it. It would be totally
Okay,
recommended.
all right.
It's basically inert for all practical purposes from the outside.
Okay, well, we look forward to working with you. I yield back.
Great. And I'm a big proponent of it as well. It is the future, and we got to get on with it. I'm thrilled to hear Buckley's one of the places that's going to be part of that pilot program. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here. And General Saltzman, thank you for your incredible service. I've only known about the Space Force since I've been in about 17 months, and you've been the face of it. One of the things we do as members of Congress is we have service academies every year, and I noticed that this year we had a large number of people interested in the Space Force. So I'm looking forward to learning more from you guys so that I can share that with those guys. Just a question for you, General Saltzman. Operations Midnight Hammer, Absolute Resolve, and Epic Fury. How critical was Space Force towards the success of those incredible missions, and could they have done it without Space Force?
We have a pretty incredible joint force, so never put anything past them. But I think all of them would agree that with the addition of the space capabilities that were provided, it just made it a little bit easier to get the mission accomplished. So whether it was integrated into the planning out of the outset, cutting off key satellite communications that our adversaries were trying to use, whether that was for their own drone capabilities or command and control, we were there to try to deny those, and we did a pretty good job of it. Probably the most important thing, though, is the targeting capabilities that we provide, as well as the warning of the missiles that are inbound and the tracking of those missiles put up a pretty capable defense. So whether it was in planning, in execution, or in defense of our forces, the Space Force was right there supporting.
We appreciate it. So this is a question for either maybe the Secretary. Is how important is the Anduril CC, the Advanced Fighter? What is it? The CCF? CCF. How important? How do you say it?
CCA, Collaborative Combat Aircraft.
That's it. How effective is the CCA, and how does it compare to our adversaries?
I think, well, it's going to be very effective. I'm a huge fan of the program. Two contractors, Anduril and GA, both of them are doing a great job. I think it's going to be a massive cost-efficient force multiplier for our combat air force. I think again, both contractors are already flying and demonstrating in exercises or other activities. With respect to our adversaries, I don't know. Probably can't go into the details, but I don't know of anything that is approaching what we're doing. But maybe have General Wilsbach add a few comments about it.
No, he's exactly right. We see some evidence that they're pursuing what we've already got flying, but they're years behind us.
And you've only had a few questions this week about the A-10, but talking to operators from all branches, they just say that 100% of every operator says it's the best thing that we could have when you need help on the ground with close air support, especially combat search and rescue. Do we have any other aircraft currently that can match the capabilities of the A-10 Warthog?
Well, match is probably in the eye of the beholder. We have other aircraft that are capable of doing close air support and certainly can support combat search and rescue.
Well, I'm glad you guys decided to keep that going until 2030. Until we see something that's capable, I'd like to see it go further. Is finding spare parts, getting spare parts going to be a challenge over the next couple of years?
I don't think so, especially with the 27 budget and the dollars that we have for flying hours and weapon system sustainment. But for the A-10, it's not that we're keeping all of the A-10s. We are still retiring some of them, and we'll keep up to 3 squadrons into 2030. What that allows us to do is fleet manage, and so as you have aircraft that get to the end of their life, we can use them for parts, send them to the boneyard, and so the ones that you keep flying are going to be sustained.
This may not be a necessary thing or a possible thing, but if for some reason you wanted to go to the boneyard and reactivate some of those aircraft in the future, is that a possibility?
Yes, we actually just did that with a KC-135 about 2 weeks ago.
Awesome. What about the B-21? How's our progress looking on that?
It's going very well. You probably saw the news. We just recently did the first air refueling. We're quite happy with the progress that Northrop is making. We've also asked them to increase the production rate from 10 aircraft at a time to 12. So they're in the process of getting to that. So we're quite pleased with it.
What's the status of the F-15? I think you call it EX, the newest version?
Correct. It's going well. It's a fantastic aircraft. The ones that we've received, I would like to see Boeing meet their contractual obligation of 2 per month.
Have you used any of them yet, combat?
No.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your service, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us today. I represent California's 27th District, as you probably know, which is home to Plant 42, where the future of American air power is being built, the B-21 Raider. Thank you, Congressman, for asking some of my questions. Will be a cornerstone of our nuclear deterrent and a powerful signal to adversaries that the United States will always be able to reach and defeat any threat anywhere. Right next door sits Lockheed's Skunk Works, the birthplace of the U-2, the SR-71, and the F-117. For decades, Skunk Works has produced breakthroughs that no adversary can anticipate and no competitor could match. That tradition of bold, classified innovation is a national security asset and one we must continue to leverage. We are eager to learn at the right time what the ultimate production goals for the B-21 program will be. I note the Secretary of Defense stated to HASC we need a lot more. Indo-PACOM Commander Paparo said to HASC, I favor 200. STRATCOM Commander Correll said we need 145, not including the joint force requirements. I also note the Air Force comments last week that a process is underway and welcome any updates they can provide in the Department's reassessment. Mr. Secretary, are there any comments you'd like to make to the committee on your current plans for the program?
Again, the program is going well. Again, these are all very complicated and extremely capable systems. It's great that we have essentially 2 of them flying, and one has done some air refueling, and they're in build of production aircraft in many forms right now, so it all looks good. We are working closely with, thanks to some congressional help, with congressional ads to increase production. We are working to be honest, we're working to squeeze as much out of the facilitization that we can. It's going to be a long-term production, no question about it. But I don't know if I can go to the specifics on the numbers, but we are squeezing every little bit of production out of them that we can, and work closely with the contractor to do that. With respect to the requirements, yeah, the chairman signed up to taking a look at the requirements, and we are working closely with them and all the customers. And, you know, that's a dual-use platform, both nuclear and conventional, so we got to work with the whole Global Strike and STRATCOM to work through that requirement set. We're doing that now. I think it would be safe to say that it will be more than 100. How many? I think more than 100 we're working our way through.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'd like to turn my comments to wildfire. I'm tracking the rapid evolution of our space-based assets with great interest. The threat to military installations in the American West is getting bigger every year. We've seen this clearly in recent large fires, including the Canyon Fire, which threatened Vandenberg Space Force Base, 12,000 acres, Waldo Canyon, U.S. Air Force Academy, 18,000 acres, Fort Cavazos Training Range, and others. And of course, there's the civil impact. The Palisades and Eaton fires in Southern California caused $50 billion of damage. And historically, the Department of Defense and other agencies have recognized that keeping bases safe and the homeland safe includes supporting civilian authorities during domestic emergencies. The DoD has built an undeniable track record in wildfire mitigation through targeted programs like Firehawk, Eagle Vision, and of course, FireGuard. The basic principle is defense resources can be applied to support defense of bases and also civilian assets when disaster strikes. There are a few different ways to do this, but I'd just love to get your top-level commitment to helping us use the assets that we have including potentially procurement mechanisms around commercial data. There are these new platforms that are coming on. General, you've taken advantage of some of these, and I think your acquisition efforts in that respect are really to be complimented. It's exactly the right direction. We'd love to get your commitment to helping us advance the security of our bases and our frontline communities in the American West through creative techniques. General Saltzman, our Secretary, would you like to make any comments to that?
Well, I'll start. We're absolutely committed to that, and I think it starts with understanding what the capabilities are that are out there in the commercial marketplace, and then having contract mechanisms that can be rapidly put in place when the emergency arises. So we're focusing on that service provider, that's our commercial space office, building out the contract vehicles so that we can rapidly pull them in, and then evaluating the technologies as the commercial market makes them available, whether it's imagery or otherwise. But our Vandenberg Fire Department has spent a lot of time on the road fighting fires, and I think they've been great partners of the community.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mesmer, and we have already been called for votes, so let's try to make sure we can get through this.
Okay. Thank you for witnesses for being here today, and thank you, Chairman. General Wilsbach, can you give an update on the development and testing of the AGM 183, ARRW, and HACM programs?
Yes, Congressman. They're obviously both are included in this 27 budget. We are actually trying to double the production of the Arrow from previous years. The testing so far is promising. We've got some test shots coming up, and we'll learn more.
Okay, thank you. Seen in a publicly released photo of the B-1B Lancer bomber carrying an Arrow over Edwards Air Force Base, when should the committee expect procurement program lines to begin for Arrow?
Well, they've already really started.
Good. Okay. Very good. What manufacturing capability limits are preventing the Air Force from buying hypersonic weapons in more meaningful quantities?
There's a lot of facilitization. There's the supply chain. There's the commitment from the contractors in the defense industrial base to move out. And these are the discussions that we've been having with them as a part of the executive order we got from the president.
That should be.
I think what I'd add is in munitions across the board, especially in some of these hypersonic weapons, as the general said, stability, long-term stability, so that they can facilitize and do the R&D necessarily, get those weapons to a cost point that we can actually afford large numbers of them is critical. This is another one of the areas where multi-year and other long-term contracts are really, really important.
Use of long-term contracts sends the demand signal that the industry should need. Thank you. Secretary Mink, what is the update on the Next Generation Responsive Strike Program, known as XRS? For the last several years, the NDA has included language expressing our support and interest in a reusable hypersonic aircraft.
I can get you maybe more details on where we stand in a different environment, but the basic R&D activities look promising, but there's still work to do.
Okay. Can you give us a picture of what budgeting for reusable hypersonic aircraft technologies might look like over the next few years?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know that one off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Mink, last year the department argued that E-7 was not survivable enough and that other sensors could assume more of an airborne early warning mission. Since then, Congress has kept the program alive, and now the Air Force has 7 aircraft under contract. What changed in the department's assessment of the E-7's value, and what gaps would remain if the Air Force does not sustain the FY27 funding?
So our plan is to submit a budget adjustment to fund the FY27, and as we do the FY28 build, to lay in the out-year production of the 7 aircraft you mentioned. What's changed is it's pretty simple, Congressman. When the decision to cut the program was made, we were looking at an 890 top line at the DOW level. There were a lot of programs that were valuable that were being cut. That was one of them. We knew we needed the space-based AMTI for a whole host of reasons we could talk about quite a while on, but the bottom line is at the 890 point, we could not afford it, and a lot of important programs were being cut. Now that we have more budget flexibility, we're working with you and up through the executive branch to get it back in the budget.
Excellent. Secretary Mink, if the department supports Golden Dome and a more resilient sensing architecture, should Congress think about the E-7 as part of that layered architecture rather than a standalone aircraft?
I guess I would leave the specifics of the Golden Dome strategy to General Gutlein, but my understanding is that it would be a part of Homeland of support of the coast with the capability in that platform. So,
okay, super. Thank you.
It will be a multi-use platform, obviously.
Okay. Secretary Mink, districts like Indiana's 8th District have deep radar, electronic warfare, and electromagnetic spectrum expertise through NWSC Crane and local industry. As I understand, the Air Force is buying 737 green aircraft from Boeing and then doing the retrofitting of those airframes in the UK. As the Air Force expands the program, would it not benefit from leveraging our domestic industrial base and do that work in the U.S.?
I think there's some work going on in the UK. Part of the installation is going on in the UK, and part of it is going on here. It's one of those joint programs, right?
Okay, I yield back. Thank you.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harrigan.
Thank you, Chairman. And gentlemen, great to see you before Congress again. I'm going to keep this short because we all got to get to votes. It's been said that the next great terror attack on our homeland will be like 9/11 without martyrs. The without martyrs part referring to low-cost, highly autonomous drone aircraft. We all know that this is a great threat. Both General Wilsbach in the Air Force and General Saltzman at the Space Force have been working hard to counter this threat. Can you talk about some of the work that you all have done to counter this threat? And can you qualify how much more work we still have yet to do to protect our homeland against this threat?
So since Epic Fury started, we've really rushed capability to the Middle East. And as I mentioned earlier, we had some Army systems that we installed in some of our bases to protect those air bases. But even domestically, we've also rushed several systems out to key bases with high priority weapons that are stored there so that those bases are covered as well. And this includes domain awareness, additional non-kinetic, some also directed energy in some places as well. We have a lot more work to do because so far we've only covered down on a few of our bases, and frankly, we need to cover them all.
And very quickly, obviously, the smaller the threat, the harder it is to see from space. But we focused on putting the data network in place at scale around the globe so we can rapidly move, once something's detected, rapidly move the data, the track to the decision maker where an effector can take advantage of it. So we try to play our part even if we can't detect it fully from space with that size.
And last point of clarification, how is the coordination between the Department of War and other government agencies that are tasked with dealing with this threat? Where's it working? Where's it lacking?
We actually just had a one-week conference, and we actually brought the entire, interagency together. So we had, multiple agencies together trying to solve this problem. So I feel like the coordination is really good.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a lifetime Navy man, Mr. Secretary, I'm going to just ask for the love of all that is holy, do not give the Army nuclear weapons. Just don't. Thank you. Dear Lord. I'm very proud to represent the 126th Combat Weather Flight and the 128th Air Control Squadron at Volk Field. And the guys that live over in Madison fly their F-35s there. It's a fantastic facility. Can you tell me what percentage of our deployed forces at any given time are reservists and National Guardsmen and women?
I think I'm going to have to call on a friend for that. Do you know that number off the top of your head?
I don't, but it's increasingly more.
Yeah.
Back when you were serving, a much higher preponderance of the force was active duty, and as we've gone forward in time, more and more are Guard and Reserve, and frankly, Congressman, we can't tell the difference between Guard and Reserve and active duty, which is fantastic, and they are allowing us to do missions all over the world, specifically in Epic Fury right now. There's a higher percentage than probably in recent past of Guard and the Reserves. We're
Well,
great.
General, unfortunately, oftentimes we can tell the difference between the two when it comes to the budget and when it comes to equipment. This is more so an issue with Rotary Ring in the Army, but I just want to make sure that our National Guards men and women and our reservists have the most up-to-date equipment to train so that when they do forward deploy, that they are mission capable immediately. And I really respect their service because they do something that we don't do. You know, they got a day job and then all of a sudden they got to leave their home, and it's really, it can be very disconcerting for them. I would in the future like to see your senior enlisted leaders with you. I noticed that they're not here. It would be good to have them around just so we can, you know, slap hands and whatnot. I want to talk about the A-10. So the F-35, you know, what does a unit cost for an F-35? $80 to $110 million. What's a unit cost for an A-10? Adjusted for inflation. I know we haven't built them since the 80s.
I'd have to go do the math, but it's considerably less than an F-35.
And what's the flight hour cost for an F-35? Up to $40,000?
It's probably not quite that high, but it could be. But the A-10 is certainly less.
Okay. At loiter time for the F-35? Depending on basing?
Yeah, obviously, but it's shorter than the A-10.
Okay. So having been on the ground as a United States Navy SEAL in combat, loiter time matters. We can work with the cost. You know, the budget's there, but we have to have the ability to have somebody sitting around with a GAU 8 with 1,200 rounds, vice a GAU 22 Alpha on an F-35 with 200 rounds, which has had issues with accuracy. So we cannot have a gap. I know that you're working towards that. And I'm no longer an operator. It's obvious I'm, you know, fat as a house and got a white beard now. But all of my friends are still, and our children are at this point. So we cannot have a gap in close air support, a close air support platform that will be able to kill the enemy that is in that hallway, vice dropping something from an F-35. And I know you care about the men and women in the military. I know you do too, General. So let's just make sure that does not happen. And for the sake of brevity, I will say congratulations on your retirement. This is not Turkey, so you probably won't be going to prison, and that's a great thing. So God bless you and the folks that you watch off after.
Gentleman yields back. I want to thank the panelists. You did a great job, and I will tell you, you got a lot of love today from this committee. That doesn't happen with all the services, so way to go. Thank you. You've been very helpful. We're adjourned.
All right. There you have it. We will be back for another one. Stay tuned. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless this United States. I am signing out.